Good morning and welcome to the regular council meeting town of Qualicum Beach. I want to acknowledge by saying that we are on traditional territory of Coast Salish people, in particular the Qualicum First Nation. Would you please turn your cell phones off or on vibration? Thank you. The first item is the agenda itself. Any changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is adopted by consent. And we have the minutes, but there is one error on number C. It says the meeting March 16. That was Monday, not Wednesday. I was just pointed that out. So with that minor change, I think they're adopted by consent. Correspondence, and we have one from the BC Council of Forest Industries. What is Council's wish? Councillor Skipsey.
Well, I wouldn't be voting in favor of this one. I think, as pointed out by a local resident, that such a broad statement declaring support for the forest industry is too simplistic. One can be supportive of forestry workers and jobs, and I think we all are, but at the same time oppose old-growth logging, clear-cutting, raw log exports, watershed ecosystem services, infrastructure degradation, and unsustainable forestry management practices. So I think they've said it very well, and I think that it's just too broad-reaching, and until the provincial government gets the old-growth logging, the recommendations from the report in hand, then I wouldn't vote for this. Thank you.
We don't have to do actually anything if we don't make a motion, then if you just stayed out of our bailiwick. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So a few weeks ago, there was a really interesting podcast that's dedicated to BC politics, and the guest was the president, I guess, of the United Steelworkers Union in our area in BC, and it was a very in-depth conversation about forestry, because there's a lot of forestry workers who are getting laid off because of, well, the structural challenges we're facing, some of which is from the province, some of which is the companies you're dealing with. There's a lot of different factors in play. But I do think that the province understands. Ravi Parmar was just in Qualicum Beach, I think, a week ago to talk about forestry at Mabry. But I do think that there's a need for greater regulatory certainty for the forestry sector. I'm not sure exactly how we recommend that. I'm fine too with just sort of receiving this and not really formally endorsing or not, because I think there's going to be 5 different opinions on what we should do with it. But I do think that there's a real question we need to ask ourselves is, do we see a viable future for forestry in our province? And if so, what is that? Because right now, there's valid concerns that Councillor Skipsey raised about logging practices. Some of them have been addressed historically. I remember when I was a kid up in Prince George, clear cutting. There's a great book about Prince George called Virtual Clear Cut, if you want to read that book. But that was basically how things were done. It was pretty ugly. But there's also, too, a really low amount of wood being harvested, and that's making it very difficult for the mills to operate. So I don't really know what the best path forward is personally, but I do think that a viable forestry sector is very much in BC's interest, also because it generates revenue for the provincial budget. I'm just not sure how best to advocate for that, so I'll just say thank you very much for the letter, and I do support you. When I show up at UBCM, I'll be sure to say, you know, we really want to support the sector. I'm just not confident that I'm smart enough to say how we should support it.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I think we're all kind of struggling with that, so I would recommend that we don't do anything with this letter, but that we wait for notices of motions or motions from members of council as to what we do support, as was pointed out. So I'll just wait for that. So if we don't need any further discussion if we're not going to do anything about this. Okay, Councillor Young.
I'm in favor of what Councillor Skipsey has mentioned, and possibly we can write a letter mentioning what we would like to see before we endorse something like this, just so they know why we're not against, we're not for it.
Councillor Skipsey, are you prepared to sign a letter and ask council for support of it? Okay. Request that Councillor Skipsey works with staff to prepare a letter in response to this request. Seconded by Councillor Vander. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So I'm not sure about that, because for some of the concerns that are raised, I'm not sure how many are still current practices. So I don't know how much current regulation has actually banned some of those practices that we're concerned about. And without doing that deep dive in what is the state of play in terms of the regulatory framework, if we're advocating for something that was done 10 years ago, then that's not really going to be effective communication. Maybe it's still viable. I know the old growth is a very live debate when it comes to a First Nations land with old growth on it. That's basically Fairy Creek. But this is getting a little bit outside my wheelhouse.
It is, I think, for most of us.
That's why I'm just not comfortable with us doing anything just yet until we really have a deep dive on what is the state of play of forestry practices and what needs to be improved. And I think that's a fascinating topic, don't get me wrong. But I do wonder if staff are going to be involved in this at all, or we're involved in our own personal capacity. You know, what's the value of that? So I don't disagree with the sentiment. I just don't know enough about what the reality on the ground is.
Then I would recommend we vote against this and move on to the next item. Councillor Young.
I just want to add that I just want to open the line of communication, and so that we can be informed as to what practices are enforced right now, and just so that we know, and we will be able to endorse something down the road.
As you know, I don't like making motions on the fly like this, so we'll leave this for now until I come back. Somebody comes back and says, here's what I think we should talk about. Thank you. The motion is on the floor. All in favor? Motion fails. Thank you. The next item is the regional district, and this is the voting system they have, the voting formula. Years ago, probably about 15 years ago, I said the way Nanaimo is growing, they're going to run out of councillors to attend the RDN meetings. So we sent a letter to, at that time, Selena Robinson, to say we need to change the voting system, voting formula for the regional district. They didn't, and of course, the city has grown quite a bit, and if they continue to grow, they won't have enough councillors to represent them at the regional board. So that's what this is hoping to do, to set up a different formula, not to change the weight of the vote they have. They will always have about 54, 55% of the vote, because that's just the size that they are. But they can't have that many members on the board because the board isn't big, and the table isn't big enough. There's not enough room. We'd have to build a new boardroom. So this is the way to go, and I support this. So I move that we support the staff recommendation. Councillor Skipsey, seconded. Discussion? Councillor Harrison.
Well, part of me is always get my nose tweaked that we're probably at the population when Parksville got their second representative. But there's just a practicality aspect that there's only so much room. And if we had the population numbers where we got to at maybe 9,500 citizens right now, Nanaimo added 10,000 citizens in the last census, I believe. So they'd be adding a new person every year, every 4 or 5 years, and eventually you're going to run out of space. Yeah. So I do understand why it's set up the way it is, and it solves sort of the problem that Nanaimo's being faced with. So right. Fair enough.
And this could have been solved back when we first recognized that problem. So all in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Bylaws. The Town of Qualicum Beach Indemnification Bylaw for adoption. Councillor Vander, Councillor Harrison, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Financial Plan Bylaw. Mr. Raj. Mr. Hare, I mean.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good morning, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. The 2026 Financial Bylaw is being presented for third reading. So currently, Council has given first and second readings, which were given on February 25th, and direction at that time was to proceed with a 6.5% property tax increase. Since then, no changes have been requested and no amendments have been made to the financial plan. This plan basically is the same plan that Council has reviewed and supported in principle and was reviewed at the public consultation meetings. It continues to balance maintaining core services, investing in infrastructure, and managing affordability. The key points to iterate are that it implies a 6.5% property tax increase. 1.3% of that is dedicated towards asset replacement reserves, which is part of the long-term strategy to close the infrastructure funding gap. 0.7% is for police operations, and 4.1% for municipal operations, which includes cost pressure increases and reinstatement of the annual contribution to the strategic initiatives reserves back to its 2024 level, and a 0.4% increase for the contribution to the reserve for investment in new assets. The plan focuses on essential cost increases only, so labor, contracts, utilities, prioritize capital investments, and long-term financial sustainability. And just as a reminder, the financial plan deals with municipal property taxes only. So it's the town's portion of funds that appear on residents' property taxes, which is for local services, infrastructure, and asset replacement. About 51% of property taxes collected or that appear on residents' tax bills are remitted to other agencies who set their own rates and requisitions independently of the town. So the financial plan before council today is unchanged from second reading and reflects council's prior direction, and staff are seeking third reading on the financial plan bylaw. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Your Worship.
Thank you. What does council wish? Questions, comments? I'm going to make the motion for a third reading. Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey, seconding for third reading. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So I did a deep dive earlier this morning on all things light industrial tax. We are still technically undercharging, but it's not too different from Parksville's. The provincial government actually has an Excel spreadsheet which shows the tax rates of every community in British Columbia, which if you feel so inclined, please check it out. It's public data. The only thing is, just for Mr. Hare, there's this weird little discrepancy which I noticed when I looked at the provincial data and our data, and it's essentially like the mill rate for residential taxation, which is about, I don't know, 89 point something of our taxes. And in our document, it says residential is 2.6640 in 2025, and the province is just like a 1/10% lower. And I'm just wondering, is there a reason why maybe the province would have a different number for that? I can't think of a reason why. Maybe, and I apologize for not forwarding that to Mr. Hare previously, because I just found that this morning, but I'm just curious if there's a reason why the province would have a different rate.
And you're right, probably nobody took that deep dive and wondered what that 1/10% difference was. Mr. Hare, do you know?
Your Worship, I can't think of any reason why. We can look. I will look into that. And I mean, generally, the numbers that are reported by the province are provided by the municipality during the LGDE reporting and picked up from that. So it's likely rounding if it is that small a number. However, I will have a look at that.
So thank you. I think it's good for everyone to know that 51% of your tax bill goes to other authorities, like the province for education, healthcare, regional district, library. There's many things that come off of it, and they're all listed. And we get to keep 49%. But we get all the responses from people about their taxes. I don't think anybody ever goes to the school district and say, how come my taxes are so high? Or what are you doing with my money? Someday we should. Anyway, this is what it is. And thank you for preparing this document and making the changes the council requested. So any further discussion? Councillor Harrison. And
just to back up the mayor's comment, the school district's budget is significantly larger than ours on an annual basis. So it's entirely a good idea sometimes to check in with the school district.
They run with a lot of money. So with that, ready for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hare. Reports. Talking about taxes and what's going on in the regional district. Yesterday there was a board meeting and we agreed to start saving up at a high rate for the new patient tower. I think we all understand that the services in the patient tower where people, a couple of weeks ago to see a friend. I came out of the elevator, and there was a person in a bed right by the elevators while people just across the hallway were spraying the old mattresses. Not a good situation. A number of years ago, we wanted to build the urgent care center in Oceanside, ended up being in Parksville. And I knew it would be a lot of money. So I asked the city councillors who represent the city of Nanaimo at the regional district if they would support paying 40% of that facility, even though it's in Oceanside. And they said, well, why would we do that? I said, because it redirects traffic from the hospital to this center. So all the directors, some of you may remember Larry McNabb and Gary Corpan, the mayor, and Bill Holdham and so on, they all agreed. So then we had a photo op on site with Tom Davies, who some of you may remember was kind of the head of this group called the Perfect Storm Group. And so we had a photo op with Ron Cantillon, who was our MLA. But he was also caucus chair. And Ron said, we're dead in the water, we don't have any money. I said, yes, we do, we have 40%. And I explained it to him. On the way back, because we drove together, he pulled over, called Kevin Valk, and he says, we need to go ahead, we got 40%. And it went ahead. plus a lot of support from the community with petitions and so on. So that's how it worked. So now we're trying to save up for these huge bills that are coming. And most people would say a new patient tower would be well over $1 billion. So we have to have, in the same category for funding formula, about 40% of that. So yesterday we agreed to increase the funding, and it will have an effect on everybody's homeowner, but to contribute another $46.8 million to the reserve. Sounds like a lot, but we need about 400,000 to 500,000. No, sorry, $500 million. So that's a lot of money. This is a start. We already have some, but because of that, we said we will pay for the business plan, we will pay for the design in advance of us having to pay our share, so to get this going. And the idea is that if we put enough pressure on the province, that's one thing. Lots of people are complaining about the care in the hospital. But if we can say, we have our share ready, and out of that share, we'll pay for the business plan and the conception plan, anything you need to get going. And so that's what the aim of us doing that, and that's part of your tax increase. They also agreed that we would have, and I just give a quick update, the high acuity in Nanaimo Regional Hospital opened in August last year. The Nanaimo Cancer Center at NRGH construction began in 2025, with completion anticipated in 2028. Long-term care facility in Lansville, which I think has about 300 units. Construction is anticipated to begin in 2026. And the new patient tower, NRGH, commitment made by the province in the fall of 2024. And the cardiac catheterization lab at NRGH, commitment made by the province in the fall of 2024. So we're moving these things ahead by saying we'll have our funding in place. How can they resist? That's the idea. Then I have a couple of notice of motions. One is about using Eagle Park, and most of you remember in the early 90s that the town sold 9.47 acres for $1 to the island health authorities. And they built Eagle Park, and they built the ambulance station, but there's a lot of room left. There's enough room left to accommodate a place like Qualicum Gardens. So we think that's the land they should build on, and that this motion encourages them to do that. And I know they don't have the money to build, but just like this town hall, it was a public-private partnership where a private developer, Nord Development, built the town hall, we leased it for 10 years, and then we bought it after 10 years for $1. So you have the notice of motion. Therefore, be it resolved that Council direct staff to prepare and send correspondence to the province of British Columbia, including the Minister of Health, with copies to Island Health and other relevant partners as appropriate, expressing the town's support for the Island Health to explore and research option to increase care bed complex capacity and on the lands previously conveyed by the town to Qualicum to Island Health, 77 Jones Street, which may be the basis for a future public-private partnership between the province of British Columbia and a private development company. So that's my motion. I need a second. Councillor Skipsey, discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So I do think that this is potentially solving an issue, but I just want to check through the chair to staff. So a year ago, we had a resolution saying we encourage VIHA to utilize the lands in Eagle Park. I'm just wondering, did we get a response from VIHA from that correspondence?
I'm not aware. Ms. Skipsey, I have Ms. Hanson, Swinson?
I'm not aware of any response.
No. So,
Nor am I, sorry.
So that's why I thought here is a practical solution, and we can speak from experience that this actually can work. If they don't have the money to build, a developer may come along and say, we'll build it and you operate it. That's the commitment they have to make, is to operate. There we are. So any further discussion? Councillor Harrison.
So yeah, there's just, it's better than nothing, so at least it's a potential for something. But I do want to just remind folks that with the provincial budget, several things were delayed intermittently. So in our area, most people are aware of the proposed affordable housing that Parks Alliance were looking to do. But another one were the long-term care beds in Campbell River. So a few years ago, there were two large facilities for long-term care for the Mid-Island area, one in Lansville, one in Campbell River. Campbell River facility was going to be 153 beds. That's now postponed, who knows how long. There's no commitment to when it'll commence. The Lansville project is still moving forward, thankfully. It's a larger facility. It's over 300 units, I believe. So very glad that's moving forward. But just to sort of highlight that we were already facing a crunch, and by delaying that Campbell River facility, it's probably going to be more of a crunch. I'm not sure how much overlap there is with Oceanside and a Campbell River facility, to be fair. I don't know. But it is likely that it's just going to push things down towards us a little bit more. There's going to be more of a weight. So it is important to work with VHUD to get as many units as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Anyone else? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And I have another notice of motion, and that is about the town crest. And we've talked about for many years that the town crest is not really culturally correct because it has the teepee, which is not a typical West Coast First Nations residence. So I asked Chief Rakama if his council would come up with a suggestion as what we should put there. And their suggestion was that it would have a depiction of the first totem pole that was on the beach, just next to the roundabout, what I think was the most photographed icon in Qualicum Beach for many, many years. I think people almost got killed stepping back on the road taking a picture of it. So that totem pole is now at the museum, and it would be the best thing, as far as I'm concerned, to be culturally correct. We also bought this paddle that was created by Jesse Rakama. And it has to be slanted up. It's not because I didn't have an eye for level. It had to be slanted up a bit. And our staff did a good job doing that. I also asked, what's so significant about a paddle? And he said, well, if you're in a canoe, you'll have to paddle the same speed and the same time, because if you don't, you're going in circles. So the point is work together and all move in the same direction. So that's the reason for the paddle that we paid for. This crest, it's going to take some time, but we could start, if we agree and then come up at the next strategic planning session, it could start on letterheads, business cards, stuff like that. So that's my motion. Have a seconder. Councillor Vander, Valk, discussion. Councillor Harrison.
So the one issue I have with this, well, there's a couple issues, but one is that we have an existing resolution from several years ago saying, let's ask the Qualicum Nation to provide us with the image, and that's sort of ongoing. And this does technically say the mayor wishes to pursue a crest updated collaboration, which is based on this design. So it sort of deviates away from what we're already sort of doing, where they can tell us what they're looking to do. And secondly, it's sort of putting a lot of, I don't know, it's the way you want to work with First Nations is usually not by putting the therefore be a resolve with 6 different bullet points and proposed timelines and everything else. I remember the first time I met Michael Rakama just after I got elected. He thought I was Stuart McLean. That was fun. So I got an earful about a development at Qualicum Bay. And I had all these ideas of things to do and bullet points and all this stuff and a little agenda on my own, and then I realized, no, that's not actually how you get results. So I would just suggest that maybe let's wait on this until we hear back from them about where they are with their design process, because last I heard, talking to Chief Rakama, we had our anniversary about a month ago. Last I heard, like, there's not necessarily a need for all this just yet. And then I'm not saying that these ideas are bad. I actually agree with you. I think that's the best thing, but I do think it's important that they maybe represent themselves, not us suggest how they should be represented. And since they're already going through that process, maybe we should just sort of hold off for now, and then maybe in a future date we can do all this work, because again, there's a lot of work staff is doing, and I think this is something that if they're not ready to present us with their update, then it solves another problem of staff capacity. So I don't disagree with the motion itself. I just think maybe let's just wait to hear back from them in a more formal capacity, and then
Yeah, and I have no problem with this gets deferred to a future council meeting, but I did speak specifically to Chief Rakama several times, and he said he needed to talk with his council if they would agree, and apparently they have. But there's no need to rush. I can ask to send this resolution to the Qualicum First Nation and say this is what we're considering, and I can bring it to them so we don't just send them an envelope and say, please look and read and sign off on it. I'll bring it to them. He's usually available on Fridays, so I'll bring it to him and say, would you show this to your council before we proceed at the next council meeting? So a motion to defer to a future council at this point would be appropriate. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Harrison, motion to defer to a future council meeting. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Harrison, public safety.
Okay, so I have notes. So yeah, just briefly to reiterate, the BC budget, I didn't really talk about this at the last council meeting because it was a bit of a rush just after the BC budget got unveiled. But I do want to highlight that basically every community housing fund, which is the railway affordable housing building that we built in the previous, well, during the previous term and this term too, it's sort of overlapped a bit. But that whole funding stream has basically been put on pause indefinitely. There is still what's called BC Builds, which is more middle income housing, but that whole funding stream has been basically paused. There's a lot of other impacts in the budget. I'm not sure when that would be something they'd be changing. Interestingly too, Violet Hayes who's soon to be leaving Island Crisis Care Society and moving on. But she did hint that even supportive housing, there might be some ongoing funding issues from the province as their budgetary pressures continue. So it is a bit worrisome to hear about that. There's just a few things for feedback too from a previous delegation we heard. I'm not suggesting any resolutions, but just some of the concerns when we had the folks from the Mid-Island Health Alliance do a presentation on all things healthcare. One is if we're going to be providing any financial support, we need to make sure that it's not assistance to business, which is prohibited from us. Two, if it's a commercial lease, and we're buying down the cost per square foot of the commercial lease by providing public funds, which is, we can do that, I suppose, if there's a proper process and it's something we're allowed to do legally. A commercial lease can be increased. There's no rent controls on commercial leases, like residential tenants, as Councillor Young probably knows. So if your landlord says you're going to pay 8% more next year's lease, there's nothing you can really do. You can either pay or you can leave. So that's another concern I have, is that if it's commercial lease and then 3 years' time we've given them all this money and they just jack up the lease rates. Talking to a director at Flowerstone, they might be looking at something similar. And then one solution too for the assistance to business would be that if a nonprofit owned the downstairs space, or if they wanted to sell it to the town, like if the town owned it, no problem, absolutely. How can we lease it to you at appropriate rate and everything would work out? I do worry though if it's a privately owned building essentially. And then I'm just not sure whether or not going to a credit union. A dentist and a doctor, a family doctor in Oceanside makes probably around $300,000 a year. I'm not sure how much a dentist makes annually, but I'm sure it's a decent amount. So a bank would probably love to borrow the money, lend the money, because they're going to pay it back. They get a good revenue. And just the last point too is that Flowerstone has been talking about some of their concerns and considerations. I'm not sure exactly where everything is with that. Pardon me. The mayor and I just briefly spoke before the meeting about iced tea. We received a letter addressed to the mayor and myself. Iced tea is basically an economic development organization that gives funds to local governments and businesses to pursue projects that enhance economic development. The reason that the gentleman who's the CEO reached out to me as well is because at a previous UBCM, he and I were working together, tag teaming to try to get more funds and walking around the dinner gala where most people are drinking too much. And we were trying to flag down key people with the BC and DP to put iced tea in front of their eyes. The other thing too, I just sort of mentioned it briefly to the mayor. I don't really have a notice of motion or anything, just something that he and I mentioned, which I thought was a decent idea. Now that we have acquired Eagle Crest, there is a lot of land to plant trees. And when I talked to Chief Rakalma, because we have our anniversary for the kidney donation a little while ago, he was talking about, well, after the gas station, what next? And sometimes you have to clear out trees to develop a property. And just one thing we might want to consider doing is just having an MOU about how if the Qualicum Nation wants to develop a property in our area, we can offset the tree loss. So you need to cut down 20 trees for your building. We have a lot of space in Eagle Crest where you can plant some trees, and maybe that'll make the province more I don't know, maybe more supportive of something. I don't think we need to do anything on that.
I'll mention that when I bring him the resolution.
Yeah.
And,
yes.
and because, like I said, we don't like making a motion on the fly, but we need to have a motion on at the next meeting about responding to that request to send a letter to the province about the future of the funding for Island Economic Trust. So that will be at a future council meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also, too, the mayor did mention that we don't want to just put our names in a form letter that's been provided by IST. It's not how you get good results. There are some concerns about Eagle Crest. I know I mentioned at the last meeting that I was going to do some notice of motions, and then when I thought about it, we're doing a bunch of public consultation on the 2nd. We have a survey where we're still waiting all the information back from that. And so I'd rather wait till those things are technically done before you start seeing solutions to what people want, and then maybe you should find out what they want first before you start saying all the solutions. I do have some concerns about things. We did have, if you look at the staff reports, for example, during the rezoning, the language in that staff report is very clear that there's supposed to be a subsequent process after the initial rezoning to get public feedback, and that would have an impact on how the land is zoned. And I'm not sure if that's still the direction we're going. And if so, that's concerning. If we made a promise that we're going to have a second process, I hope we don't deviate from that. There's a few other things. There's also an event for Mabry. One thing just for the mayor, since he sits at the RDN table, and he's the only person who does. One thing that was interesting for Mabry is someone mentioned in Bowser, water license for a water bottling facility, and they're thinking of getting a lawyer as the neighbors. And I just think something the RDN, it would be more in their wheelhouse. And something the RDN might want to look at, like the state of the aquifer in Bowser. I'm not totally familiar with the Bowser aquifer because it's so far from us. I don't look at that data. But they were, the citizen there seemed to believe that there was an expansion of the amount of, I think it's something like 5 million liters per year would be the amount on the license, and some concerns about long-term water use. So I'm not sure if that's something the RDN's looked at already.
I haven't heard anything about it yet,
Okay.
but I'm sure it will.
Okay. But it's something that the RDN might want to check because water is a very, how should I say it? It's a very wide-based conversation in this area right now. There's a lot of folks talking about that.
Ms. Petronella?
Your Worship, it related to the concerns about the staff report. So if I could respectfully request the councillor take that matter offline with me, because that left a bit of a question mark with me. So if we could take that offline, Councillor Harrison, that would be welcomed. Thank you.
Sure. It's the staff report for the public hearing that was done in September, I believe. I forget the exact date in September. I can't remember if it was the 23rd or 25th or somewhere around there. But yeah, I'd be happy to have that language because there's a specific language in the staff report which sort of detailed a process that was supposed to happen in the future. And I see Ms. Varela's hand.
Again, Your Worship, I don't have the staff report in front of me or the facts, so if we go too far down this path, I'm going to have to write a memorandum correcting anything that was said today that wasn't reflective of the staff report. So if we could just respectfully take that offline, and we'll bring that back as needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then I did have a bunch of questions which basically would list out all the costs at Eagle Crest. But I think I'll just post all the things that are publicly available. But I do have concerns that we do know what some of the liabilities are from the purchase of Eagle Crest, and we haven't really come out with a document yet saying, here's all the costs that we know of at this time. Things like the state of the buildings, the state of the equipment, any stormwater upgrades, the course reconfiguration. They exist in these isolated little pockets. So the purchase price, the cost for stormwater, Mr. Sales mentioned that 2 meetings ago offhand. But I do think that it's beneficial if we just have one document that people can look at, so they don't have to look at 7 different meetings and try to piece together things, because I don't think it's the intention of staff to make it difficult to sort out what the total costs are. But right now, I'm getting a few emails from people who want to see those costs laid out. And there is a series of breadcrumbs. You can go through minutes and through agendas and find the information that's published. But it would be good to have one document with, now that we purchased the property, we're on the other side of the purchase. Before you buy a property, obviously you don't publish those reports. But now that we're on the other side, I just don't see why we wouldn't sort of just say, okay, here's the information we have on the cost of things. So again, this is just something I'll probably work with staff for the next few weeks for the next regular meeting and see what a notice of motion looks like for that meeting.
Thank you. Councillor, Ms. Varela.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I think both council and staff have been very clear that as those numbers become available, we do anticipate publishing a full report. Right now, we're working within a $2.5 million budget that council approved. If that number changes, again, we have flagged that risk. This is a reconfiguration that's in progress. We have budget amounts for everything. What we will do once everything is done is we will actually report out on the costs for the total project. So we do have the reconfiguration of the golf course. We have the reworking of the facility. There are a lot of moving pieces. So again, those numbers, and I've discussed this publicly before, that those numbers will be published once they're finalized. I'm not comfortable putting out a range within $1 million that has been previously referred to. We will get the facts. It will be made public, and we have said that commitment over and over again. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And it's not going anywhere, but the work is progressing with the announcement of Extreme Meats running the restaurant, bar, banquet room, patio. I went in there, I think the next day, and they were ripping out all the floors. They took in all the vinyl veneer off the beams, which are beautiful, big old beams that are going to be shown instead of being hidden. So they're very enthusiastic about the remodeling of the restaurant and the clubhouse. And I think so far with the reconfiguration of the fairways, will actually be a par 35, which is the same as Memorial, but it'll be 100 foot longer, 100 yards longer. So it's not going to be, as people had suggested, it will be a little par and putt or par 3 executive. That's not what it is. You can play it that way. You can play from the yellow tee or the red tees, but if you want to play up the blues, it's going to be a challenge. So with that, I think we have to wait until all the numbers are complete, and there will be no numbers hidden. We just have it, put them all together. Thank you. Go ahead.
Just because there's certain things that we have received in the past, like we did receive a building report, which about half a year ago, that did have some pretty detailed information. So I just think there's some things that maybe now that we're on the other side of the sale, we might want to start publishing some of that.
Okay, thank you. That concludes your report. Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. So my report is on page 197 of the agenda. I was away the last meeting at the Resilient Urban Futures Workshop at the University of Waterloo, and there will be a policy brief that's published, but it probably will be in early May, so stay tuned for that. While I was there, I met the people from Local Futures, and Local Futures is going to be putting on an event tomorrow at the Rotary House, and the public is invited. There's more information on the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region website. It's with regard to Sustainable Development Goals, the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. So if anyone's interested, I would direct you to the Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Region website to register. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skipsey, and thank you for presenting your report in advance, so this excels the meeting speed. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I as well have my written report on page 198 of the agenda. I really don't have much to add other than the fact that I really enjoyed, as acting mayor, attending a presentation by the students of the Arrowsmith Independent School about what they thought their ideal community center might look like. So that was very, very interesting. They had some good ideas. And once again, that St. Andrew's Lodge Historical and Cultural Society is working hard to finish up their project, and hopefully that will be done. Well, they're hoping for the 31st, which isn't too much longer, but maybe by mid-April. So other than that, everything's on my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vander Valk. Councillor Young.
I have a motion, whereas Council has an interest in ensuring development review processes are transparent, consistent, and understandable to applicants and the public, and whereas applicants benefit from early, clear communication about Council's expectations for alignment with the OCP and about any Council concerns or requested changes so that proposals can be revised efficiently and appropriately. And whereas Council also wishes to ensure that expectations regarding development cost charges and community amenity contributions, where applicable, are understood early in the review process. Be it resolved that Council directs staff to prepare a draft Council policy that outlines an approach for providing development applicants with early clarity regarding Council's expectations, including clear communication at the outset regarding alignment with the OCP, identifying and communicating Council's concerns, requested changes in areas of non-alignment as early as possible in the review process, reducing repeated or prolonged Council and Advisory Planning Commission meetings by presenting a comprehensive list of issues to applicants at the beginning of the process. Improving predictability, timeliness, and transparency in Council decision-making on development proposals, and reviewing the application of DCCs and CACs for new development projects. And further, that the draft policy be provided to Council for consideration at a future regular meeting.
Thank you. I'll second that. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Sorry. Before I really get into detailed feedback, I'm just sort of curious, I don't know if it's staff or Councillor Young, is the intent then to have almost like a concierge service to streamline folks when they submit an application, or is it just sort of a checklist to make sure we're following best practices? So I'm just curious about the staff input on this, and I just saw Mr. Sales raise his hand.
Start with Mr. Sales. Go ahead, Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. So fortunately, the town does have a pretty substantial body of knowledge and research that was done a few years ago about development processes and how they can be done efficiently while maintaining transparency. So the motion itself is requesting a policy. And we do have a lot of background research already done. There is staff support the idea of some sort of a policy to establish kind of clear expectations, both from Council's perspective and also the developer side. Now, having said that, it is not in the 2026 work plan, so it would be up to Council to allocate resources in a future financial planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Well, I do recall a presentation from the consultants about sort of updating our development approval processes, but I just wondered how that related to this motion and what would be different from our current practices if this were to proceed.
Yes, thank you. So the town does have a few policies in place already, outlining steps for developer requirements for, say, public information meetings and things like that. So if we were to implement this policy, we would be looking at those as well and seeing where there might be a policy solution to help Council and also the developers in terms of knowing what to expect in a process. A policy is not regulatory and wouldn't bind Council. I think that's the important factor to consider when we're looking at policies, is that ultimately decisions around development approvals are up to Council, and policies are there to inform and guide, but not to regulate or require anything from Council decisions. Thank you.
Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions in the first whereas of the motion. Council has an interest in ensuring development review processes are transparent, consistent, and understandable to applicants and the public. So I'm just wondering what that is referring to, because with Bill 44, the involvement of the public has been very much limited. So I'm wondering if that would be addressed.
Councillor Young, what did you have in mind?
It's all about timeliness that when we look at development applications, that is looked at in a period of time that's more reasonable. They should not have to go in front of Council multiple times, like 5 times or more.
They should not have to go to the advisory planning committee over 3 times. We should be able to resolve things with what they're expecting and what we're expecting, and then have the public know about this, and then have that addressed in one presentation, not to have bits and pieces scattered over a period of time. I mean, look at Pheasant Glen. It took like a couple of decades. And so every time we delay a developer, it's the cost of construction goes up. The money that they spend on showing up in council with their staff, their architects and design team, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars when they show up multiple times. That is money that they could be used to be building and keeping the housing project more reasonably priced. They could also be giving it back to the town in the way of DCCs or community amendment contributions. So that's why I'm asking for a clear, concise presentation on a development and our concerns given back, and for the public to be aware of it all in one motion, like one presentation.
Thank you. I think if the project is aligned with our official community plan, it goes very quickly. The last proposal we had from the people on the highway, we actually didn't feel the need to go back to the OCP or to the APC because we liked it. It had the 3 stories, looked good as a building. We had feedback from the APC before, and I expected to go back today for statutory notification and proceed. So if it's within the OCP, that's what the community said, this is what we want. Council said, follow the OCP. So if you don't follow the OCP, yeah, you're going in for a lot of meetings. Go ahead.
But with the OCP, some of the guidelines are a little blurry. The one about 3 stories, when we were drafting that, I'd mentioned that, you know, times have moved on. 4 years now, we're still using the guideline of 3 stories. When we've had, is it Mark Holland from the, what is it called? Mark Holland from the, he's a member of the MODIS team, and he's doing the WAM project for us. He's recommended that new development should be 4 stories to be viable. So meanwhile, we just drafted a OCP that says 3 stories only. And yet, I brought that up, and a fellow councillor says, well, we can do case by case. And yes, we should, because we do have buildings now that are 4, 5, and 6 stories. And yes, we had lots of people complaining about it, but they did get built, and they're at capacity, and there is no complaints. There is no surrounding neighborhood depreciating in their property values. So when we say conform by the OCP, it's a little blurry.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Vander and Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I think we're getting into a whole discussion about particular projects, and I don't know that that's this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I didn't mean to interject, but I will take my turn in the queue. There is a staff comment, if we could go, that follows the notice of motion that recognizes the work that's being done with Vancouver Island University and planning consultants to support the development of approaches that strengthen and clarify municipal development review processes. As such, staff support the development of this policy, however, not in the 2026 work plan, given competing council priorities. So, Your Worship, it may be appropriate for council to consider referring this to future strategic planning.
Thank you. We got a lot on the agenda. This is only about a policy that's not binding. So perhaps we could defer this to our strategic planning. That would be appropriate. Councillor Harrison.
Just a few comments in general. One is that when we got the last update for the development grant, so we received a grant of about, I think it was about 160,000, 170,000, I forget the exact amount, but it was a relatively sizable grant to update our development processes. We got an update saying, okay, we're integrating with many other communities, we have a working group, and Mark Holland was involved with that presentation as well. But I never got the sense that we got a final report saying, so for subdivision applications, this is how long Qualicum Beach takes, this is how long Parksville takes, this is how long Comox takes, or something like that, where we looked at for carriage homes and secondary suites. This is how long we take in Qualicum, this is how long we take. And I never got a sense of sort of how we perform relative to other communities. So that's something I'm interested in. I know staff have no time, but for me, one of the outcomes of a grant of that size would be to look at how do we operate in terms of things that don't come to council. I do think some of the debate we just had was more in line of the styles of individual members of council and how much time we want to spend on different projects. A lot of the projects we've been discussing the most have been rezonings or variances, which are compliant with the OCP, technically, but there's still a lot of debate. So it's more about who you elect in an election, really, at the end of the day. Most of the time, you kind of have a sense going in of what their style is, and that's what you're going to get for the next few years. So I'm not sure how much that would help. Where I have concerns more is actually not so much with the professional development community. I understand some frustration, say if it goes to the APC 3 times and you have multiple iterations being done. My concern is more for carriage homes, for citizens who are just doing something in their backyard. They have no experience being a developer. They don't know how to fill in the forms correctly. And then how do we make sure that it's an easy process for them as opposed to they have to hire someone to do all the submissions and then they have to have all these extra costs for something that's relatively simple. It's ironically some of the smaller things, which I think could take a lot of staff time too, where they have to have a lot of back and forth with people who aren't professionals, clarifying, no, this is how you submit the documents, this is what you need this form too. So I do think something like this has some merit. I'm not sure it's specifically for the more contentious projects. I think that's just politics at the end of the day. I'm not sure you can solve that through policy. I think that's more just who folks voted for at the end of the day. But I do support the idea of putting this to strategic planning at the end of the day. I think that's reasonable. There would be a staff allocation in terms of planning time. So we need to do that through strategic planning.
So with that, if you make a motion to refer this to strategic planning, we can second that. Seconded, Councillor Vander.
Well, actually, I didn't get to finish what I was saying because Ms. Varela had her hand up and then, so.
Forgive us, but go ahead, say what you want to say.
So, well, I was going to say that I think that we should put this on the strategic planning for 2027.
You're right in line with the motion.
Okay. Well, I'm not quite sure where we would put it, but that council refer this to strategic planning for 2027.
That motion is already on the floor.
Okay, so
Any discussion?
somebody beat me to it
on the
because I was interjecting.
All in favor to referring to strategic plan? Unanimous, I think. No, Councillor Young opposed.
I prefer it was addressed in a more immediate time.
No, the motion is to refer to strategic planning. You're opposed to that?
I'm opposed to deferring.
Okay, Councillor Young, no opposition. Thank you. Okay, anything else from your report?
My council liaison report is on page 199, but I also want to mention that I forgot to mention March the 8th, which was International Women's Day, and I had also attended with Mayor and Councillor Skipsey and Councillor Vander the presentation by the Canadian Federation of University Women. Presentation was Dr. Brioni Penn. She's a strong advocate for women and our environment. And I just want to mention that she commented at the end that despite all her degrees and awards and accomplishments, she received international attention when she protested logging on Salt Spring Island by riding horseback through downtown Vancouver while nearly nude and dressed as Lady Godiva. So I don't know if we need attention on certain topics, somebody has to ride nude. But I also want to mention appreciation for Marlez Diamond. I don't know if she's here in the gallery today. She normally does attend our meetings, but I don't see her. But International Women's Day is a day of reflection on the progress women have made in society and to celebrate inspiring women. I'd like to mention a true community champion is Marlez Diamond, who was nominated for the Women of Influence Nanaimo Awards. And I won't read her all her accomplishments. I'll have it typed in the next council meeting. But she's wonderful to acknowledge.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Corporate Services, Ms. Swenson.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. On page 201 of your agenda package is the Accessibility Advisory Team Framework that Council is being asked to consider an update framework for a more flexible advisory model for ongoing accessibility work. The document that was previously referred to was a terms of reference, which was better aligned to a more formal council committee structure, and the legislation for this permits that a group can operate not as a formal committee. So we are seeking Council's endorsement of the proposed Accessibility Advisory Team Framework as the town's ongoing structure for accessibility consultation and replacing it with the previously approved Accessibility Advisory Team Terms of Reference. So there's two resolutions, one to rescind the Town of Qualicum Beach Accessibility Advisory Team Terms of Reference and to endorse the Town of Qualicum Beach Accessibility Advisory Team Framework and the structure. And this would see 3 meetings per year. It would align with the funding that Council allocates in your strategic planning, and the term Accessibility Advisory Team Framework is in your agenda package as well. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison, this is kind of your bailiwick.
Yeah, sure. Well, I do like how the deliverables it is make it clear, because I know sometimes I was concerned that we'd be talking about allocating funds without actually having reached out to the other team. So I did see that it's in the deliverables on page 207 of our agenda. Thank you very much to Corporate Services for that. It is actually, for me, in my view, it's really important if we're going to have a ongoing funding. Just what Ms. Svensson has referred to, in our budget we have $50,000 for accessibility every year. And the idea is that it costs a lot of money to do any sort of enhancement. So that fund has been allocated every year. It's part of where your taxes are going. And then you're getting feedback from people who have lived experience. So just to be clear with why it's important to have that feedback, because we don't have a formal plan yet. It's good to get feedback from folks who have lived experience with these sorts of challenges.
Thank you. So you
kudos.
moved the first recommendation to
Certainly.
rescind the old one, and seconded Councillor Vander. Discussion on the rescinding. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And on number 2, the new subject, seconded by Councillor Skipsey. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. And then Ms. Svensson, please proceed with the summary of resolutions.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. On page 211 of your package, we have a summary of the 2025 council resolutions. Primarily, council provides direction to staff by way of resolutions made at regular and special meetings, and throughout council's term, council has made a total of 1,446 resolutions that require action by staff, and 375 in 2025. And staff are pleased to report that most of those resolutions have been completed or are in progress. We do have a resolution on schedule, a couple of resolutions on Schedule B that we are asking council to rescind. So 2 resolutions, one to receive the report, and the second resolution to rescind the resolutions on Schedule B.
Thank you. Could we have a motion to receive the report? Councillor Vander, Councillor Harrison, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And now the rescinding, and it's on page there's Schedule B. There's a couple there. The first one is to deal with Sue Big Oil, and Ms. Varela have some latest update on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we did receive some questions about Council's consideration of this matter, and Legal Counsel has advised the following statement can be released. Prior to the town being provided with a copy of the Arve Finley legal opinion, Council was asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA. The town sought a legal opinion on executing the NDA. Based on legal advice received, Council did not execute the NDA and therefore was not provided a copy of the legal opinion by Arve Finley. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Skipsey.
Thank you. I did want to comment on the last one, but it went by so fast that now we can check off number 25130 as complete, because I sent the letter that I was supposed to send, so just an update there. And then I did want to say that I am concerned about who is going to pay for the cost of infrastructure in the future. And in the increase, currently, local governments are left with footing the bill, and like all levels of government are experiencing costs for replacing infrastructure, enhancing infrastructure, because it was built for a climate that no longer exists, and extreme temperatures are causing roads to buckle. We had a sidewalk buckle out by the elementary school. Atmospheric rivers and pineapple expresses cause storm sewers to overflow. You just have to look at what happened in Maui recently. And even our windstorm yesterday, you know, it's, my friend had a tree come down in her front yard and missed her car and her house, luckily, but that was probably why your power was out. So I think that, you know, the big oil companies are raking in huge profits, and they need to pay a share of what's to come. And I think the writing's on the wall. So I don't want the total bills to be a burden to be placed on our taxpayers. But what I wasn't able to get confirmation on is whether, if the class action suit moves forward, if the town could join at a later stage. And I think there is usually an opportunity to do that. So, but I don't have confirmation of that at this time. So I won't be voting in favor of this today. And I think that it's a conversation that's going to be happening again and again in the future. Thank you.
Ms. Svensson, was there a mover and a seconder for this? Not yet, okay.
So, well, I guess I'd move the staff recommendation then. If there's no seconder, we move on. Okay.
Go ahead.
And then just one thing, Your Worship, sorry. Just before we proceed, there was one resolution in our list of your annual resolutions I want to check up on because it's got no listing as completed or not complete. So would that be possible maybe after this rescission, just briefly talk about one of the things when we receive the report. There's this one report on page 244 I was curious about. Yeah.
Deal with this one, and then
Fair
I'll
enough.
ask council if they agree to review that particular
Thank you very much. So yeah, I do understand where Councillor Skipsey is framing from, but I don't think that a class action lawsuit, I'm fairly certain that you don't have to pay to play for a class action lawsuit. They usually say, okay, if you want to join in, send us correspondence by this date, and then they get going. The real issue here is that for West Coast Environmental Law, who is bringing this forward, starting a class action lawsuit and getting a judge to say, yep, you have grounds to start a class action lawsuit is multiple years of work. And who pays the lawyer fees while they're doing that work is a fair question. I know they're looking for local governments to provide some support. WECL does get a lot of support from the Law Society of British Columbia, and that's basically public funds. That's funded through the BC government. So that's about half their annual funding already is public. And fair enough, they do some good work. But I do think, too, a class action lawsuit, back in the day, my dad was a lawyer. He was never involved in a class action lawsuit, certainly nothing of this magnitude. He was very much a small town lawyer. But he did say probably 10 to 15 years for something this complicated. I think a significant portion of people will not be around in 10 to 15 years. I think if we want to talk about oil companies paying their fair share, it's through taxation at the provincial and federal level. And you can say the sectoral taxation, you can look at emissions, high emitters for their business operations. There's a lot of things you can do to actually get those revenues in the short term through other channels that you don't have to start a lawsuit. So that's just why I don't agree with that. I do think Councillor Skipsey has a point. I will also admit, too, that some oil companies have used some very clever think tank ways, and the way I remember climate change was being discussed in the 90s and the early 2000s of, here's one scientist, here's another scientist, gosh, they have two opinions, as opposed to, what do we do about this because it's happening? I think we lost a lot of time. I'm just not sure if that's something that's illegal. I don't agree with it, but I'm not sure that's illegal, so I'm not sure a class action lawsuit, unless there's evidence of criminality, I'm not sure how we get involved in that at this stage. So I'd rather just be arm's length. I'm also not comfortable with the NDA. That for me was a pretty restrictive NDA without getting into too much detail. But I do hope that people understand that just because you're not supporting this initial funding doesn't mean that there isn't a valid point about climate change and the need to make sure it's addressed equitably. I think there's a fair conversation there. I just think there's different tools.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, this was before I was on council, but did council not pass a resolution saying that we are in a climate emergency and declaring that. Can someone fill me in on that? So I think we need to take it seriously, and the previous council obviously thought so too. I don't know that this is the way to take it seriously, and perhaps we can find out if it is possible to join into the class action at a later date. I would not like to see the idea or the principle that we are in a climate crisis and we need to deal with it. So I don't know if this is the best way to deal with it. I don't know if Councillor Harrison's comments, there have been trials of raising revenue in other ways, like the carbon tax, which is questionable across Canada. So it's more a comment than a solution to whether we should rescind or not.
Thank you. Councillor Young.
I think climate change is a problem across our country, and I think we should lobby our federal government to pursue this on behalf of all of us. So I would not like to see us individually get involved.
Thank you. Further comments? Motion is moved and seconded. Further discussion. All in favor? To rescind the motion that's on the floor. See, opposed? Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey. Motion carries. Thank you. And that was is there another one that we need to deal with today? There's one about some funding from April 25. And you have it in your agenda package on page 254. Ms. Svensson, can you give us some of the background, what happened with this resolution?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. That was part of Schedule B, so both of those, all three resolutions were as one that we asked. But this one is the allocation of the $590,000 community and amenity contribution that has been, council had allocated towards the Qualicum Commons until such time there's further direction. That those funds have been allocated as of April 16th, 2025 to that.
Thank you. So that's been rescinded with the same motion that we did. Thank you.
Yes.
Next is the announcement of closed council meetings. Yes?
Just there's a question about whether resolutions in our package that, sorry, it was just one of the things.
The one that we all passed before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we had a chance to
And
start
I
talking
said
about those resolutions.
Council, okay, if we bring that one back for consideration or discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, Your Worship. It's just on page 244. And just because it's a resolution that Councillor Skipsey made with Barry Avis way back in the day, I think. I think the first term I served on made the resolution, and this term made the resolution. There's 3 terms in a row. So it's on page 244. It's 25-258, and it's the Yambury Park one. And I'm just curious, it's not listed as being complete. So I'm just wondering, is there any sort of process that we need to do on our part in order to get that finalized? Just because I think there's over a decade of resolutions on that. I'm just curious what we need to do to
Well, whether it was
get on the other
passed
side.
or not, when discussion at the Eelquest area came up and someone suggested, why don't you develop that and raise some money to buy the golf course? I said, no, that's a park. We're not going to develop Yambury Park. Mr. Sales, as far as the technicality of this motion?
Yes, thank you. So the direction from council was to prepare a bylaw that would dedicate Yambury Park and some other land for the purpose of park on the legal plan. So that hasn't been done. It is intended for a future meeting. It's not time sensitive in terms of, in relative to other things that staff are working on. So it hasn't come forward yet, but that doesn't imperil the areas that are identified here. It's not like the absence of a bylaw is putting Yambury Park at risk at the moment. So it will come forward when staff have resources to prepare that bylaw. And I would note, kind of winding up the way back machine, council hasn't asked for a bylaw in the past. The council directed staff to change the OCP designation away from residential to parks and open space, which was done in previous iterations. So this bylaw process is the first time that council has directed us to do it, and it will be done. Thank you.
Thank you. So the effect of it was carried on when I was approached by certain residents that said we should develop Yemery Park and raise some more money to buy the golf course. So that was off limits. We didn't do that. So it's protected in the OCP, and I think a bylaw in the future may be necessary. Okay, Councillor Harrison, you okay with that? All right. So the next item is the announcement of closed meeting motions. Ms. Svensson.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. That is contained on page 255 of your agenda package, just for information.
Thank you. That's just for information, and a motion to receive that information may be appropriate at this point. Councillor Vander, Councillor Young, discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any, carried. Planning and Community Development. Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. The next item under the agenda is a development variance permit application for a property at 532 Memorial Avenue. I do have some slides, but I'll just briefly introduce it first. This property is currently zoned Commercial 9 in the zoning bylaw. The C9 zone permits both residential and tourism, and the application, as proposed, currently meets the use and the density. However, the application is requesting a variance to the height. If approved, the variance would increase the maximum height on this property from 7.5 meters to 14.78. Can I have just those PowerPoint slides up? Perfect. This property is located at the intersection of Memorial Avenue and Hoy Lake Road. The access is currently proposed from Hoy Lake. There's an underground parkade here and some surface parking here. The development proposal is essentially one structure here that has an articulation to kind of make it read more like two buildings there. This portion is recessed away from Hoy Lake. And then there's another building that is broken into three components farther down Memorial. There are perspective renderings in your package, as well as elevations, cross-sections, and a number of other design details. This is an application that's been before council several times, and the staff memo also notes the changes that have been made as the application has proceeded. I know it's hard to see up on the screen, but the initial proposal was relatively boxy, rectangular. It has been refined over time. The height has come down and has been pulled away from the edges. The current proposal is stepped back from Hoy Lake Road, also from Memorial, and also from the east side of the development. This is another slide just showing how the height has changed over time. So there is a staff recommendation in the package today, but having said that, I believe there's an opportunity for public input at this point prior to consideration of any motions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from the gallery who wishes to speak? Pardon? Oh, there is a speakers list?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Young would like to speak. Go ahead.
Mr. Sales, I'm just wondering, there is a draft bylaw that is getting the zonings to be all at 11 meters. And so I'm thinking that, so based on that, wouldn't the height variance be less? It'd only be like 3-point-something meters?
Mr. Sales.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for bringing that up. Council has asked staff to bring forward a bylaw that would make the residential zoning bylaws consistent so that 11 meters is the maximum height, not like this one, which is 7.5 meters. Now, having said that, that bylaw is not in place at the moment, so the variance being considered by council is from 7.5 to the proposed height. However, it has been discussed in previous meetings that council should maybe reference that 11 meters in their mind, and members of the public as well, because that is the maximum height on all the adjacent residential properties. So if you want to think of it as a variance from 11 to 14.78, then that would certainly be a rational way to think about it. But technically, since the current zoning has a maximum height of 7.5, the variance is from 7.5 to 14.78. Thank you.
Go ahead.
But then just in all fairness, because the province came out with Bill 44, wouldn't it just be more
democratic, that our multi-units are at the same height allotment as the residential.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Young. And yes, that would be the change that would be included in a housekeeping bylaw to make the 11 meters a consistent maximum height for a multi-unit residential.
And that direction was affirmed. And I think it's mentioned in the report as well. Anyone else from council? I should ask council any question, comments. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing it from the renderings. Is there an underlying slope to the building, or is it basically just flat and put in the side? Just because if you calculate height, it's supposed to be, if there's on an angle, it's the average, but if it's basically flat, it's the edge. So I'm just curious which of the two it is.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So height is measured from the average natural grade at the boundaries of the building. So the building itself is flat. So yes, thank you.
Okay. So before we start the public engagement, and this could be anyone, developers, architects, residents, neighbors, anyone can speak to this. But I expect that we treat each other respectfully, that we don't applaud, we don't boo, we don't roll your eyes, although I can't hardly control that. But that you actually are respectfully listening, and I make sure that when you speak, you have that same courtesy. So I want to make people feel confident and comfortable that they can express their opinion respectfully, and that all of us listen respectfully. Thank you. I got a list, and the first one is Berusley, the architect. Come on up. And just push the button. You got it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for opportunity. I will try to be on point to maximize my 3 minutes. I did prepare some drafts and pictures. I'm not sure if we can, it's already part of the agenda. If page 328, I'm not sure if we can look at those one. Since that come, I already did visit the 4 property right across this property, which be immediate effect of this project. So this is the highlighted orange colors, our project and 4 neighbors. It was very good, the conversation with them, and here it shows the distance between is height always related to where you are standing, and the comparison, the distance between the buildings. Here it shows the distance between the existing building and proposed is somewhere between 137 to 213 feet away from each other. That's the why we think. Can we go to the next one, please? In next one, I'm showing basically if we cut through the whole lake road, we don't see more than 3-story over here. Basically started even from 1 story, stepping 2 and 3, top floor even 10 feet, setting back. So essentially we don't see more than 3 because as you see, our average grade is almost 3.5 meters below the Hoy Lake. The measurement shows in the left-hand side, 1478, is already 3.5 meters below the Hoy Lake. That's because of how these properties dropped, and 4 corner average grade shows how far we are down in the ground average grade. So would you please go to the next one? There's a few pictures here, the middle one, important one. The only view we have at the property is the Memorial Drive, nothing in others. Please, next one. Again, next one, please. And my time is going very hard. This is the first home. I did scale the BC Hydro pole, which shows in the road, where angled basically when you're staying in front of each home, where you see these buildings are. If you see in the pictures in the top, there is a red line shows where those buildings, how much they're gonna see from the buildings. if you go to the next couple of pictures, I'm just showing the all others. I already looks like past my 3 minutes, but I will go very quick last point.
You're welcome to come back after we had some more communications, and then you can perhaps address some of the concerns that are being raised.
Sure.
Thank you. Deborah Richardson? You have up to 3 minutes, but we'll do that multiple times, so I just don't want to have one person talk for a long time and nobody else can, so you have
Do I have
three.
to push a button or something? No?
No, you're good to go.
Okay. The first picture is our property. We're right across the street, 106 Hoy Lake. And he actually came to my door and said, can I stand on your door and take a picture of the view that I'm never going to have again? I just like the bylaws of Qualicum. We love to live in Qualicum, and I don't know.
I forgot to tell people, if you're in this chamber, this is Qualicum Beach. Qualicum is the name of the school district, Qualicum Bay, there's many areas. So this is the town of Qualicum Beach, and I would ask respectfully that people refer to that. Thank you.
I lived on the island all my life. We just called it Qualicum. But Qualicum Beach, yes. So I just wonder why someone can come in, a buyer, and go so far against our bylaws and actually expect that the council will okay a variance like that. They knew the bylaws when they bought the property. So why do they have to go so far beyond? Why can't they just adhere to the bylaws? They have a lot of excuses saying that we need such a height to entice people. Nobody needs to be enticed to move to Qualicum Beach. We have the busiest life lab on the entire island. We have the busiest quality foods on the entire island. We have the busiest Saturday market on the island. We don't need to have taller buildings with better views to entice people to come in to Qualicum. We're happy. Qualicum Beach. Okay?
Thank you. The zoning bylaw. Louise Vogler.
So, His Worship, Mayor Westbrook and esteemed Town Council members, I'm making this statement on behalf of the property owner for 543 Memorial Avenue, my mother. So, on behalf of the property owner, we are a property directly impacted by the development project and the variance permit application under discussion today. We reiterate our opposition to this application. We do not believe that either the variance permit or the separate development permit request that is also under consideration today meets the letter or the spirit of the official community plan. We've laid out our rationale in our written letters to the Honourable Mayor and the Town Council, which we understand now may be part of public record. We implore our elected representatives to carefully consider the long-term implications of their decision today. While this discrete decision at hand is the height variance request, this decision is part of a broader project decision that has the potential to irreversibly change the character of this community. Perhaps there is a fundamental misinterpretation amongst the various stakeholders in this wonderful community about what the term small-scale village character really means. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we have Carol Murphy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to say that, last fall, we rushed up to the Raven Song Center to participate in helping develop the community, the plan, and what we were going to be living with. So we are a little distressed that we have an OCP that was passed before Christmas, and now it's like it's been thrown out the window. So I really urge you to consider this, because from what I have been Googling, I am told that an OCP is a land use that is legally binding on council and council's decision. So please, I am, like to say I'm adverse to the 4-story building. The developer said he did everything that he was asked to do, but in the June meeting, he was asked to present a 3-story plan, which has yet to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Tyra Henschel.
Good morning. I'm one of the people who live adjacent to this proposal. I would just, you've read all of our letters, our correspondence, our petition. We're one of 120 people who are very anxious about this project. I'm just asking to appeal to your better angels. We don't need this kind of a development in a long-standing, single-family neighborhood, and it is against the OCP. I hope that you'll vote accordingly.
Thank you. Oops. Next is Kelly Olson.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors, staff. I live in the neighborhood as well. My son owns a property right across the road. As far as I know, he hasn't been approached. I would just like to say that our height limits and restrictions, they're not goals to be blasted past. And we love our town of Qualicum Beach. I moved here when I was 3. My children also grew up here, and I was hoping that my grandchildren might too. But it won't be as pleasant in our neighborhood if we put up great big buildings and block views and add traffic to a nice, quiet neighborhood. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Carson Cow. Carson.
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. Thank you for the time. I am one of the architects on the project, and here on behalf of the applicant as well as Darush, who's one of the other architects. I just want to go through a couple of the things that we've gone through on this project, starting with the 3 revisions that we worked through. Through those 3 revisions, we saw the building step down in mass as discussed, but also adjust in terms of height. One of the major decisions that was made, and it was contemplated and adjusted as a result of a great process like this in response and feedback to council feedback, but also to the APC, was to push the building down further. I think it's important to understand that architecture is experienced, not just technical. So further to the point of the steep site and the average grade for this lot specifically, on technical and paper, that is what essentially forms the height of the building, being at 14.7 meters. As we've kind of discussed already, the suggested height of this kind of smaller scale density should sit around 11 meters, and it sounds like the town is adopting that. I'd like to point out that at the middle of the building, as measured from Hoy Lake Road, we sit within that 11 meters. The perception and experience of this building from Hoy Lake is a 3-story building, and that's been taken into account through the APC, as well as comments provided by council. I think with that in mind, I would also like to remind your worship as well as councillors that through the process that we've gone through, APC has recommended this, and also we have received staff recommendation to proceed with the variance as well as development permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. Can we have some clarification on that particular item, Mr. Sales, about the 11-meter and how this property and this development compares to that 11-meter statute?
Yes, thank you. So what the speaker was referencing is the height relative to Hoy Lake Road. So that's not how height is measured, but the point is that yes, from Hoy Lake up to the the top of the building, at the center of the building, is less than 11 meters. That's correct. As you go further east on the site, the grade drops down, right? And so that portion would be higher than 11 meters. If you go to the west towards Memorial, then it's sloping up. So at that point, to the top of the building, the height from Hoy Lake Road to the top would be less than 11 meters. So it decreases further. Thank you.
So then where is the requirement for a variance if it meets? Because I think we all understand that we're going with 11 meters. That's the direction we're going. So where is the conflict?
Yes, thank you. So height is measured from average grade at the four corners of the building. So the building is not on Hoy Lake Road. It's further back, and the farther back the building goes, the lower the natural grade because it drops off quite quickly. So the starting point for the measurement is significantly lower than Hoy Lake Road.
Thank you. Next is Ken Shelley.
Good morning, Councilman, the Mayor. First of all, I'm a community builder. I wouldn't want to call myself a developer for sure. And listening to the process that we've gone through, we have listened very much to the city staff. We've followed the process. It was thought that it might be better to go for a variance as opposed to go for a rezoning. And so that's kind of why we went that route, because we met all the other density, number of units, parking, use of land. So it was just a variance that we actually needed. Have listened to council, heard you loud and clear. The site from Hoy Lake Road is lower than 11 meters. 11 meters was the new mark, so we did follow council. We did listen to the APC. We took the 31 recommendations, addressed every single one of them, and over 2 meetings, put them into perspectives. We listened to the town experts suggesting that this is a well-needed development, in that the people that are living here are progressing and wanting this type of housing, and we don't have it right now in town. So that height is required to actually be able to accommodate the people that are coming up. And if we are worried about our elderly and our people that want to live and stay in Qualicum Beach, this kind of property, this kind of height is going to be required, has been suggested by the town experts that we've been hired. Did listen to the citizens concerned. I know with respect, I understand where they're coming from. I mean, we are very committed to having it because of our bias, but obviously there's going to be some people that don't like it. But that of 100 people of our 9,000, I'm pretty sure that we will do our best as community builders and listening to the community to make it better, not worse. This is going to be better, and it's going to look fantastic coming up the road. I think we have reached out to, obviously, the public. We could have invited them. We promised the people that were against that we wouldn't bring a whole bunch of people for it. We, as I said before, we have 200 people on a waiting list for this project, so obviously they would be here, and they are Qualicum Beach taxpayers' dollars. This development would actually help taxpayers in that this is what we need. We need something to help bring down our taxes, and this kind of development would do that. If, for whatever reason, the councils make a decision, then I guess we would follow the next process, which would make us go to rezoning. The zoning in place is in place. It's just height variances that we're looking for. So I think ultimately the right thing to do is to consider that it's only looked at from the back of the building would look taller, but from what we're concerned about is less than the 11 meters that we were talking about, and it's well documented in all the documents that we have. So we did listen, and we're here to ask for you to take some time to consider it. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Jeff Winnie? Oh, sorry, you're going to get to spell.
No worries, it's scribble. Thank you, Mayor, councillors. I guess the thing I want to speak to is some of the other projects that have gone forward in height, some larger buildings. You've got East Village that we did, which was approved at 23.57 meters, the other one at 19.76. In the end, us as developers, community builders, we took a story off of the one building. So we took it off on our own. So if you're talking about taking away financial revenue, that's not our consideration, so we've done that before. Berwick, which is just next door, it sits at 19 meters. The gardens, I believe, I couldn't read it on the schedule, but based on it being about 5 1/4 stories plus a roof or 5 and a roof, it's sitting at about 16 meters. And then even just down the street at Railway, it's a 4-story building with a roof, and it sits at about 12.75. Each and every one of these projects has been met with criticism, outcry from people complaining about heights and not going forward, but ultimately they went forward. And I think I wasn't here when Berwick and the gardens went forward, but my understanding is that early on there was a lot more public scrutiny. Over the years, it's gotten smaller and smaller, which is showing the transition to the need and the desire to approve this kind of project. So I just want to compare it to, we're 14 meters. And I guess the one last thing I wanted to touch on is I understand there's a document with some motions going forward in regards to increasing the building heights for industrial and some residential to 15 meters. I can forward that, but there's some talks about it. It explicitly plays towards, I think, Eagle Crest and a few other projects, but if Luke can confirm that, I can forward the document that I was shown. So again, we're under the 15 meters on this one if it was a flat site. But yeah, I just wanted to point out that where we are in relation to other larger projects that have been approved.
Okay, I'm not aware of this latest document. Mr. Seals?
Thank you. So a portion of the Eelcrest lands is zoned for institutional residential and has a maximum height of 15 meters. At this time, there's no plan to apply that zoning to other areas of town.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Golson, Dave Golson.
Good morning, Council and Mayor. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I live at 578 Memorial Avenue, Qualicum Beach, just about a block away. We've got 2 great entrances into our town from the south and the north. The one from the south, we come down through a lovely dual carriageway, boulevard, lovely treed area. From the north, from the ocean, from Highway 19, we come past our golf course, and then we have about anywhere from a 5 to 10% grade on our road coming up towards the town centre. I think this development, when you're coming from the ocean, it'll put a scar across the landscape. It's either a scar or a very large blister. You compare that with the unit just described, 103. That's 3 stories plus an underground parking. Add 1 more story to that, and then increase it by between 3 and 4 times the width, and that's the sort of scar that you're going to get when you come in from the ocean. I think this should not be approved for a variance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's it for the speakers list. Is there another one? I'll trade you. Thank you. Susan Pio?
Mayor and councillors and the public, we have an OCP for a reason, and that is to protect us against this type of development. Besides the controversial height infraction, the developer has omitted to comply with the OCP guidelines when looking at the property from Hoy Lake Road side. The OCP guidelines ask or suggests that a scale to complement the existing village scale and character, the shape of developments shall avoid massive building components. Such design should include varied roof lines and landscaping that stress the human scale of buildings and site improvements, and structures of more than 2 stories in height should utilize design methods that will substantially reduce the massing of the buildings, for example, stepping or incorporation of upper floors onto a roof design. I don't feel that the points have been met. And as to the height variance requested, nothing has really changed. The owner is still asking for, accepted that it will probably be 11 meters, still asking to go to a total of 14.78 meters in total. This is a massive structure that lies parallel to Hoy Lake Road, which is close enough to the road to actually exaggerate the perceived height on Hoy Lake Road. So coming up from Memorial, it's sort of set back as almost in a wave. It's not as bad, but if you're actually on Hoy Lake Road, you're looking straight at a massive structure that is tall and wide. And I don't fully, I accept that you might not see part of the first floor of apartments or of the condo, but you are going to see probably 1/3 of that bottom floor of condos. Thank you.
Next is, let me see, Jessica Fontori. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Westbrook and Council of the Town of Qualicum Beach. My name is Jessica Ponsford. I live on 145 Hoy Lake Road West in the area affected by the proposal developed at 532 Memorial Avenue. I'd like to express my opposition to the development variance permit. My main concern is the scale and especially the height of the proposed building. Qualicum Beach is known for a small town character and charm, and development of a size feels out of place in a community like ours. Buildings that are significantly larger or taller than the surrounding homes risk the changing of the character that makes the town special. I'm also concerned about the impact on traffic and pedestrian safety, especially on Memorial Drive. The project, or Memorial Avenue, this project absolutely increases the traffic along Memorial Avenue and onto Hoy Lake Road. There's already a bend in the road that limits visibility, and additional vehicle traffic will make that area more hazardous. It has already been hazardous in the last couple of years with several accidents that have had vehicles cross the road and go onto the sidewalk, which there are children walking down that road that live in the community, such as my own, from not only the high school, but the elementary school that takes the bus to various community schools in the area. It'll also make it more difficult and dangerous for pedestrians trying to cross the street. Qualicum Beach is a quaint town, not a city, and many, if not all, residents live here for the same reason and respect of that character. For that reason, I respectfully oppose the development variance permit for 532 Memorial Avenue. However, I do agree with a project at that property. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one more person, and I can't read, I'm sorry, I can't read the name. Pardon? No, I don't think at this time we'll just have to pick people speak, and then we can ask questions. I can't read this name, but it starts with an M. Going up.
Malcolm Candler. I'm hoping over the last month or so you've received a few of my submitted comments that were addressing overall concept, height variance, and public awareness. But I understand I have to limit my comments here to height variance. If a portion of the building that is subject of the variance insists in enhancing the village character and architectural interest of the building is a critical statement. The building is massive. It's 300 feet long. It's at the top of the hill. It's got 10-foot high ceilings. In my opinion, there's no gesture of compatibility to the neighborhood. They've not offered us a Qualicum Beach character or scale, therefore no height variance should be given. Currently, we live in a garden paradise. That's why we live here. Respectfully, is this paradise lost? Thank you.
Thank you. So this is the end of the speakers list, but people can speak this. Oh, I got another list. Because people can go around for second times. Or for the first time if you haven't spoken yet. John Bell Irving.
Thank you. I'm opposed to the project. I think it is out of scale and out of proportion to that particular site. I think it's irrevocably going to change the neighborhood. I live at 222 Crescent Road East, which is not immediately impacted, but I also have a concern, which I agree isn't being discussed today, but I think the traffic that adding is really going to change that neighborhood. I agree with the project on that site, but I think this one is out of scale and I'm opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ray Smirsky? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Ray Smirsky. I live at 144 Hoy Lake Road East, which is almost directly across from the development in Kitty Corner. So we're going to be, significantly impacted. We're going to see the highest portion of that building as it's on that side of the site. And I think I wrote a letter earlier saying, I'm okay with development. I'm not anti-development. But stay within the guidelines, and if we had a variance for something like a clock tower or peaks of roofs or something that built a little more character and interest and felt a little more like Qualicum Beach, I would be for it. But it's just another flat roof building. Looks like something from Parksville. I've always been opposed to putting the tallest building on the highest part of the site. I think it belonged down lower on the site and possibly along Memorial, but that's design. So I'm opposed to the height in general, and thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. And I think that does conclude the speakers list. So who hasn't spoken for the first time? Anyone? Then speakers for the second time, Mr. Shelley.
Hi there. Thanks again for letting me speak again. I was understood that it was going to be about a variance about height. So we are asking for a height variance. As far as the zoning goes, and I wish everyone understood this, we are going by the zoning. We are using 40% of the property, and we're allowed to have 50 residents. And we have done it exactly the way that the zoning provides, with ample parking. Everything is in perfect harmony with the zoning that's in place. And I guess the argument is maybe we don't like the zoning. But the argument for us is to get the height so we can accommodate 8 more units. So I just want to make that clear. There will be a mass building there of sorts, if you want to call it a mass building, but I think it does reflect Qualicum Beach very well. It will be a great entrance, much like we provided going down Memorial. We were the ones that developed Memorial. So we are very aware of what the community is looking for, being that we've lived here also for 45 years and done business here. So it's about height. That's all I thought it was about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing for the second time? Come on up.
Mr. Mayor and Councillor, thank you for the second opportunity. I just wanted to mention about regarding when urban designer and planner prepare the OCP, the tools they have to basically control of the growth is the OCP and zoning. And when they have a lower density, like residential, one single family up to the 4 residential, they said 11 meters. And when you go to the medium density, where you can build the hotel and apartment building, in order to increase that from low density to medium density, your tools is, lot coverage and the height. Lot coverage for this project is 40%, and we are right at the 40%. We allowed to build 52 units, not 50, but we are now 50. We are actually 2 below. And in order to basically basically best comparison has to be minimum 11 or higher, as many municipalities, as far as I know, all of them. If you are low density, you will, when you go into medium density, you have to increase the lot coverage and the height. The second things, I had a very good conversation with one of the neighbors, which they didn't have an issue with the view because there is no view for any of those for property. The issue is privacy. And that's very respectful because they already put lots of nice hedges and trees to create that privacy and respect that. And I think it's very important to respect that in the design. What we did, we are proposing basically solid or frosted railing. When you're sitting in the, in the deck, you do not have a really first view to somebody's front yard. And the second one, actually, I brought up, this was from neighbors they brought up, which is great one. The second one was the light. We are putting also apron in front of the doors, balconies down, to make sure the light of these decks is not shining anybody's front yard. So I'm saying is, we are trying to basically meet all the needs and respecting everybody's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vander, you had a question?
Thank you. I did, when people were starting to talk about traffic and things that aren't under the purview of what we're discussing today, but I did have a question. When will the public be able to give input about other aspects of the project?
Thank you. So the discussion today, as was noted, is about height. It's a development variance permit to increase the height. The development permit, should this proceed to the next meeting, or should it proceed past the development variance permit, there's no public input process for a development permit.
So after this variance is, if it were to go forward or not, if it does go forward, there's no public input, and particularly after the development permit per se, there's no public input the town would not look at other aspects.
Thank you. So a development variance permit, there's a lot of subjectivity to consideration of variances. Development permits are different in that council is reviewing a proposal in relation to the specific guidelines that are set out in the development permit area guidelines. If it meets those criteria, council's discretion is fairly limited, and there's fair process would say that the development permit would be issued if it meets those criteria. So public input isn't one of the factors that council is legally able to consider in deciding whether or not it meets those criteria. So in some cases, we do provide opportunities for the public to weigh in. For example, this application had a committee of the whole meeting early in the process. So there are ways that the town can put a finger on the pulse of the community in terms of some of the key development permit area considerations, but in the development permit review process, council doesn't consider public input in deciding whether it meets the criteria. Thank you.
I have another question or clarification. So the main emphasis has been on the 11 meters on Hoy Lake Road, whether it's a little higher or a little lower along the stretch of Hoy Lake Road. But my concern is it may well be 11 meters on Hoy Lake Road, but the 14.7 meters is lower down because of the slope, and that increases the dominance of the building on the site. So I think we need to keep in mind that it's not just Hoy Lake Road having the 11 meters, but it also needs to be farther down. So I think we're losing track of that because it will be measured. If it were 11 meters across the board, like just 11 meters, then it would be considerably lower again on Hoy Lake Road, but it would be within the 11 meters elsewhere on the site.
Thank you. This time, anybody who likes to speak, just raise your hand. I've got a hand. Mr. Shelley, go on up.
Just to clarify, if we were 11 meters...
Just wait till the microphone is on. Okay.
Oh, is it? Sorry. Just to clarify, we're talking about 11 meters off Hoy Lake Road because that's a flat area. If we take the medium, that's where it gets a little complicated. But if we were to have 11 meters halfway down Hoy Lake Road, the building would be a foot because it's falling that far down. It's falling 30 feet down from the top of Hoy Lake to the bottom of the Crescent. It falls 30 feet. So it's how you measure it. We put 11 meters halfway through. It's going to look a lot more than 11 meters because you're looking at it from 30 feet down. So just to make sure everyone understands, that mass is going to be hard to change if we're still 11 meters, no matter where we built it. So it's this, the concern was off of Hoy Lake Road, and we're taking the medium of all of it, but because of the complex of the land falling so much, it makes it difficult to try to make that clear. But it is 11 meters from Hoy Lake, and obviously, because we have to start lower in the ground because it's falling, it's going to look higher from the other side. So,
thank you. We've got some other speakers back there that had their hand up. Come on up, young lady.
Just once more with feeling. We did ask for and receive a meeting.
Your name again, please?
It's Tyra Henschel.
Okay.
We did ask for and receive a meeting with the developers, Ken and John, and we also had a separate meeting with Luke. Both were very productive meetings. We're not against development of the property or against this development. I would appeal to all of you and to the developers, work with the community. We want to work with you to realize something better, a better gateway for our town. We're happy to support that, but not this project. Thank you.
Thank you. And the lady beside you?
Hi, I'm Jessica Ponsford again. Again, with the accordance to the traffic control and everything, as height is an issue, as height becomes the 11 meters that we're talking about, the corner of Hoy Lake and Memorial is impacted. And as the bend of the road goes there, and there's a lot of traffic coming up and down, and you are accelerating to go up the hill, there is a cause for concern with safety. So that is an impact on the project itself, especially as the building sits at the corner of Hoy Lake Road. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Seals.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. It has been noted by a few of the speakers and also by members of council that because the focus is on height today, if I could ask any future speakers to limit their comments as to how the height impacts their perspective on the property rather than other aspects such as traffic. Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. Once it's out of the tube for me to say you can't say that. It's being said. So we got to be careful about why we're here, and then it's about the height. Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery? Come on up, Carson.
Hi there, Carson again, Your Worship and Councillors. Just want to clarify in terms of the perception from Memorial Avenue, not just Hoy Lake Road. Again, when I mentioned earlier that we went through a series of iterations and revisions, as Ken had mentioned as well, you know, the view specifically from Memorial was addressed through some revisions through APC. We went back and forth with APC regarding the inclusion of an amenity building that we have on the property. A big portion and rationale for this amenity building as it relates to height is to allow for the stepping of the building as it's perceived from the back as well. And on top of that, as it relates to the height and mass of the building, coming up at the start at Memorial on the furthest north end, the buildings do also step in succession, and in that way it allows more of a tapered effect, I would probably describe it as, in terms of the change in height and elevation heading up towards Hoy Lake Road. So the perception, and again, this is architecture as experience, not necessarily just numbers on paper. The experience itself would be more of a tapered effect than necessarily a flat wall. Thank you.
Thank you. For the first time, come on up, please.
Good afternoon. Blaze McNeil at Hoy Lake Road. Qualicum Beach is my home. There's confusion about this height restriction. If this is the top of Hoy Lake Road and Memorial Drive runs down here, if this is 11 meters, how high is it out here? Down here. I mean, to me, it looks like it's a box store. It doesn't show the actual physical look. I don't know why we couldn't have a model of some kind built so people could explain better the height restriction.
I think Mr. Sale is looking for the right picture to show you that.
Okay, thank you.
That's an old one.
Okay, so the one on the bottom left with the, that's a new one on the bottom right? Okay, I'm still opposed to it, okay? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Yes, anyone hasn't spoken for the first time yet? Coming up. The gentleman in the blue shirt, you haven't spoken yet. Mr. Golson, just a moment. Let whoever hasn't spoken yet first.
My name's Mike Reeves. I live on Hoy Lake Road near Berwick. I'm opposed to the 532 height variance, and I keep thinking that the height as it stood was 7/0. It's going to 14/0. That's a 97% increase on the existing height. The mass of the building, as someone else said earlier, is 300 feet long. That's the length of an NFL football field with the end zones. So if you're looking from Hoy Lake or you're looking from Memorial up, either way you look, it's going to be a massive building coming up for sure because of the extra height. But if you're one of the residents who live right on the corner, you're going to be looking out your front lawn at 4 balconies, the length of a football field, looking right into your yard. I don't see how that fits in with any OCP plan that I've seen. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Golson.
Thank you very much again. I probably wasn't very clear when I was describing the view when you're coming in from the ocean. I think a couple of people now just clarified it. It's going to be 5 stories high from the base of the parking underground floor to the top. It's 5 stories, which is going to be about 14, 15 meters. So you compare that with 103 station. That's 3 stories plus 1 for the parking. So just add another story on top of that and then extend that almost up to the residences, the low-cost housing. And that's going to be the mass of that building. So when you're coming up Memorial Avenue, think about taking 103, adding a story to the top, and then going right west until you get to the residence, and that's going to be the massing of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, come on up.
Hi, again. They said, the architect said that he spoke to the people across the street and no one has a view. I have a view from my house, and he actually asked if he could stand on my step and take a picture of my view, which would be the view for the people that will be moving into the condo now. And also, I see trees in the background there on the bottom picture. Now, they've said they're taking all the trees down. Are they leaving trees there, or are they?
Like I said, it's about height variance.
Oh, it's just about height. Yeah. It's just about height. Okay, and also the someone said that the public, Qualicum Beach wants this. Well, the only ones, I have friends in Qualicum Beach that have never even heard about this whole thing, the people that just live in the very close vicinity are the ones that got any of the letters. Okay?
Yes, I think there was a radius of, I forget the radius, 100
Yeah.
meters?
So he's saying that, oh, only 100 people out of 9,000 are against this, but no one actually, other than us, got a report about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Swenson?
I would just like to clarify that we do post it in the newspaper to meet the statutory requirements, and it is also on our website and through our constant contact, so it is widely spread throughout the community.
Thank you. I have a question for the architect, the proponents, and I have to stick with the rules. So I'm going to ask staff, is it appropriate for me to ask a question either through staff, to the developers, to the architect, something that's been kind of on my mind that I wanted to say. Does council agree if I raise some questions at this point for clarification purposes? Councillor Harrison?
Should staff maybe talk about let's see if we even do the variance, because if it's not related to height, we don't get to do the variance, and then the DP would be the stage where we have.
The question is about the height.
Oh, it is about height. Okay, fair enough. Sure.
Everybody okay? Mr. Sales?
If I might suggest an alternative, once you close the general portion of public input, it will go to council for discussion. And if there are just questions, clarifications that council requires, then they could ask that of the applicants, because they are here in the room. The risk is that we don't necessarily want to open up a back and forth with all members of the community at this time, because that's not the intention of these public input sessions. Thank you.
Okay, so to be fair to everybody, I will have to ask the questions through you. I will ask the questions through you to the architect and the proponents to make sure we stick to a fair and consistent procedure. So I want to make a couple of comments. Councillor Harrison?
I believe Mr. Sales was indicating that we should maybe close off the public portion first, so that's the last few people who want to speak, whoever's left, and then maybe we can start asking questions to staff, just because it creates, I think he sort of mentioned that if we're getting into a back and forth while the public input is still open, it's dodgy.
And that's why I asked the question. I want to make sure that we're not causing more confusion. So is there anyone else left who wishes to speak? Oh, I see 3 hands. The lady with the glasses on your forehead, coming up. That's Carol? Thank you. Hi, Carol.
Hello again, and thank you for your time, Mayor and Council. Now that Luke has put up that last rendering, I forgot all about Memorial Avenue, because the elephant in the room is the building at the back. But the 3 buildings going down Memorial Avenue are under 15 feet away from the walkway. So it's barely from here to that wall. They're now going to be 3 stories high. So look up. They're going to be taller than the lamp posts, which they didn't render in that rendering. And they're going to be overwhelming. So maybe we could even reduce those by 1 story, if that was possible. It would humanize the scale of that portion of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Shelley.
I promise this will be the last. But to Councillor Young's point earlier, if it was clear to a community builder on what is expected, it would be a lot easier at the very, very front. Having the land that's zoned already for 40% land use and the ability to have 52 units on it would suggest that no matter how you put that parcel on that subject property, it's going to have mass. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get 50 units in there. And on top of that, to accommodate parking. So if we were to have the parking so it was exposed, that would look very, very bad. So knowing in advance, this is exactly Councillor Young is suggesting, to a developer could say, okay, we can or can't do it really early. But we did follow, just so you understand, we did follow the instructions from the city staff. We were following everything that we were asked to follow based on the zoning that's in place. In fact, even suggested just go for a variance because the zoning is in place. What you're proposing to build is considered zonable, acceptable. So the only exception to what we did, based on the zoning that we have in place, is the height. So if it meant doing a rezoning, maybe that earlier in the day we would have done that, because it is very expensive and it does translate into the persons that are going to end up buying it, which is our local Qualicum Beach people. And we did go out to the public. Maybe not everyone knows about it, but we were very vocal when we were building East Village and around, because this was a future project. So we have talked to literally hundreds of people and have a list of over 200 and some odd people looking for transferring from their residence that they live in right now in Qualicum Beach as taxpayers and have been here for a while to move into a living that'll give them a little bit better lifestyle. So I'm sorry that it takes, we don't have this diversity in our community. Thank you again.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Respectfully, this will be really quick. I just want to add, is the problem maybe not that the piece of land is just not big enough for the density and what they want to do without a height variance? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Because we're going to close this session, and then we'll have council have a discussion and ask questions, and we'll go from there. So this closes the public input for this particular project. I have a couple of comments, as I said, I would like to make. Following up what Mr. Shelley said about the entrance that you did with, I think Dave Bryan was involved, from Garden to 4th. Those homes with a lane in the back, garage suite or secondary suite, accessible all by the lane in the back. Beautiful way to enter into the town. Something that we could consider on the 17th fairway at Eagle Crest. Beautiful way to enter. But that is the difference. That looks spectacular. And the same what you did with Qualicum Beach on the waterfront. I forget, it's the one where used to be Captain's Inn. I forget what it's called now, QB, Anyway, he did a super job on that. So I commend you, and same with the store. It looks fantastic. But last time you were here, you mentioned that basically, and I asked to have it printed out, at the very first one could have been said that 5-story look should have been taken down to 2. That would have solved all the problems. And I thought, well, there was a motion made that says 3 stories. So that motion was made, I think, last year, June or July, that Councillor Skipsey made. So, and I know we can't have this back and forth, but when I read that, that's why I said, okay, I heard something. I don't want to make a decision now, but is there a way to deal with these, sounds like reasonably small areas that exceeds will exceed the 11 meter, which is, I think, is the new measure. Can that be stepped down? When we approved the building next door, the Berwick, I asked the Danfers, I said, you need to reduce the impact when you come up Memorial. And so they cut it down. It's a beautiful outdoor terrace, and the same on this side of the building, they cut it down. So are there ways, and I'm going to have to ask to Mr. Sales, for that project to be less demanding of a variance by changing some of the ends, the areas that are will exceed the 11 meters. I think it's an attractive project in many ways, but it's also very big, and it has set a new standard. So I'm really struggling with the comments I've heard and what the architects have said and what may be possible, because I had these discussions directly with the Danfers about their project. So my question to you, Mr. Sales, can you speak with the architect and the development and address the issues where the height variance could be changed? So that's my question. I know you don't have the answer right now. You need to talk with the developer and organize. So obviously, I'm not ready to approve this, but I think you're getting really close. But that was the piece I picked up when Mr. Shelley spoke the last time. I said, if you told me this, I would have taken that, would have solved a lot of problems. Well, right at that time, Councillor Skipsey made a motion, said 3 stories. So I think we need to be respectful of the neighborhood, but I also would like to see a project, and some project will be built there. And it's not going to be always the same council that deals with it. So I think we need to work together as a community to see what works for as many people as possible. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, just a few points for some of the things that were raised. One, I know technically we're talking about building height, but some folks did mention traffic. ICBC does have data on crashes that you can find online, and I'm actually looking at it right now. Memorial is an arterial in our OCP, which is supposed to be the busiest type of street. You have 3 different types of street, and the busiest one is an arterial. So Memorial is supposed to be really, really busy. That's what it's supposed to be. This basically the Ring Road, Memorial, Old Island Highway, those are our arterials in our OCP. That's basically it. There aren't any other, there's major collectors and minor collectors, but those are the only arterials. When you look at the actual intersection, there's only 2 accidents in the ICBC crash data. Now, obviously, if you do a big development, that'll change the numbers over time. But right now, that's not the major source of accidents. It's actually on the Old Island Highway, where we put in the roundabout. That's currently 28. So
I have to remind you as well, it's about the height.
Yeah, oh, sorry. But it's just, there is publicly available data on accidents, and you can look at that. In terms of the building height, I think one of the fundamental problems with this whole process is that we have a zoning that's pretty old. The original building height, that zoning, I don't know the exact date that the zoning was first codified, but I'd imagine probably 30 years ago, maybe more. So that's a completely different building code, completely different material costs, completely different labor costs, different financing rates. So the underlying reality of how do you build on a site like that is different. If we want to start changing the development, there's not a lot of wiggle room right now because they are meeting the site coverage basically precisely. They are meeting the density. Actually, they're 2 units under. And they are meeting the usage, which is set out in the zoning, right? So the difference here is only the height. When you go through all the things, setbacks too. There's no variance for setbacks, so I'm assuming setbacks are being met. So when people say, well, it's not in accordance with the OCP, if it wasn't in accordance with the OCP, we'd be doing an OCP amendment, right? We're not doing an OCP amendment. We're doing a variance. Now, it is a relatively large number at this point. When we get that 11-meter thing, if that passes, who knows, might not. If it does, then it's basically a 3-meter variance. But I just think of, when we're talking about the size of the building, the last thing on our agenda is something on the Old Island Highway. And when you look at the size of those buildings compared to this, it's probably larger. It looks like to me like that's all one contiguous building at the end of the day, when I was looking at some of the renderings. So, or no, it might be 2 block mixed in, but it's actually much larger when you look at the footprint. So I just think that for this site, given the zoning we have, this is probably the best you can do. If we want to downzone the property as a council, that's one thing we could do, but I think it's really hard when someone meets basically every criteria. And the only question I would have is, under the current building code, what are the minimum heights for each floor, right? Because if we're basically, it's really hard to get lower in terms of a floor because of current building code, then that's basically the minimum legal building. So, you know, I think there's a fundamental question here of, if they're meeting every standard in the zoning other than the height, and they have to deal with contemporary building code, which does have certain limits, what is basically the minimum that's legally allowed? Because if we don't allow that, then we should probably be talking about downzoning the property, to be fair and to be honest. So I just do have a bit of a problem when basically they've complied with almost everything that's in the actual zoning that the town has set out and has had for some time, and then are told that it's too massive or it's too bulky or doesn't look right. Well, what is the zoning then? Because if meeting the zoning creates something that people don't like, then what are we doing? And I do think too, to an earlier in our term, when we were looking at a development on First, which was for a duplex, and we had a very large public hearing and about 50 people showed up. And when people were told, well, it's actually compliant with the OCP because we're supposed to have density in our downtown core, this is in the village neighborhood, technically, well, then our OCP should change. was the response. So I do worry about what it says when if you meet almost every requirement in the zoning and you're told you can't build that, well then what are you able to build with the zoning? So I know we're not probably going to make a decision today, I don't think, but I just really have a hard time that if we have zoning set up, we've reviewed our zoning through our OCP update. If we don't like what the zoning is, then why do we have the zoning the way it is?
Thank you. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. The proponents were told at the very first meeting, before it was actually formally presented to council, the comments were it's too high and it's too massive. And that was at the very first meeting. And then I believe that's when it did come to council, they had reduced it from 5 stories to 4 stories, plus a little amenity space on the top. And at that point, the motion was made to ask them to bring it down to 3 stories. And we've just kept reiterating 3 stories, and they've just kept coming back with 4 stories. So I don't know that conferring more and seeing if there's something else that can be done. I think we've been pretty clear in terms of 3 stories, and they've been pretty clear that they're not flexible on the 3 stories. So we're kind of stymied, it would seem to me. I think we would be better making a decision than deferring it, because that was part of the proposal or the motion that Councillor Young made, was it just keeps going on and on and on. I think the reason why it's going on and on and on is because we keep we keep saying 3 stories and they keep coming back 4 stories. And at some point, a decision needs to be made.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey, and then Councillor Young.
Yeah, thank you. I agree that I think it's not fair to the community to keep postponing this, and my hope was that the applicant would have heard the concerns from council and the community at the last meeting and come back with something that was more in line with the direction that council had set out, and that the height limit would have been reduced. But as far as I can tell, it's exactly the same proposal, unless I'm missing something. I think it's the same. So I would be prepared to make a motion after all of council has had an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
In consideration of voting on this variance, I like to base my vote on rationale and not on emotions. I'd like to respect the professional advisement that we have from the Advisory Planning Commission and also from our staff. And from all the meetings that they've had, currently right now is a go as a recommendation for this variance. So on council, we're lay people with the exception of Councillor Petronella. She has an architect degree, but the rest of us are lay people. And I just feel that I have to respect the professional advisement. And also from what I've heard in these years being on council, with Mark Holland saying that economically, and he's from the MODIS team, and he's doing the WAM project for us, and he's saying that, buildings need to be 4 stories to be viable. So are we going to penalize someone that's bought this commercial property and say, okay, well, too bad, you can't build 4 stories, even though that's what economically it is suggested? So do we refund these people their money for having bought the property because they're not allowed to do a proper build? it's just worrisome for council to, decide on this. And we have also seen bills in this community that are 4, 5, and 6 stories. And so they didn't align with the OZP, but they got passed. And to this day, we don't have complaints about them, or not much that I've heard anyways. And also, this is providing density, helping us out with our tax base. I don't have skin in this game to vote for this project. And I'm just trying to base it on rationale. And I know I've had a mayor say to me that if you wanted that view, you should have bought that property. So, here I am. We're supposed to vote for the right decision. And it's really hard because I hear the residents. I feel for you. But, it's just difficult to vote on emotions versus rationale.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor, who said they want to make a motion or had a motion in mind? Councillor Skipsey, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to make one comment first, and that was in response to the other taller buildings. The examples that have been given, I don't think any of them have been built in the middle of an established neighborhood. So I think that's one of the differences that we're not talking about. But I would like to move alternative 1 as amended, and that is that the development variance permit for 532 Memorial Avenue be refused as it does not comply with the previous direction given by council on June 18th, 2025 for the height not to exceed 3 stories, and the portion of the building that is subject of the variance does not assist in enhancing the village character and architectural interest of the building. And further, that in future, the maximum height of the buildings be consistent with the OCP. Yes, the OCP and the recent direction given for updating the official community plan to not to exceed 11 meters. Thank you.
That's pretty long, and I said please don't apply. Thank you.
Your Worship, I did provide a copy of the resolution to staff, but I have made some changes given the input I've heard today. Thank you.
So, do you have the resolution?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. That the development variance permit for 532 Memorial Avenue be refused as it does not comply with the previous direction given by council on June 18th, 2025 for the height not to exceed 3 stories, and the portion of the building that is the subject of the variance does not assist in enhancing the village character and architectural interest of the building, and further that the maximum height of the building be consistent with the official community plan as per the recent direction given for updating the official community plan and not to exceed 11 meters.
And that was seconded by Councillor Vander. Discussion. I'll let Councillor Skipsey go first as a mover. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to also respond. I don't think we're penalizing anybody. People buy property with the zoning that is in place and the restrictions, the guidelines and whatnot. And so people know what they're buying, and everything else is basically a gift from the community. So I think that we've been clear that we would like to see 3 stories here. Thank you.
Well, just to that point, in the last month, well, actually it wasn't last month, it was like 2 weeks ago, I believe when this was on the agenda for the statutory notification, there was no requirement that it's 3 stories. It was just, can you address the intersection? That was the conversation we had when we were doing this discussion about the statutory notification for the folks in the council who remember that discussion. So that was the actual sticking point we were curious about, is how to make sure that the exit for the traffic is as safe as possible, and if there's a potential way to collaborate with the developer. That was the actual conversation. So that's one issue, is that was a conversation for 2 members of council, but wasn't a conversation for 5 members of council. So that's one issue. The second issue is also too, that if you're going to say 3 stories, then you should probably be looking at changing the zoning to increase site coverage. Because if you basically squish a tall building, those units have to go somewhere. All right, and so if you don't increase the site coverage, then it's unreasonable to say that we're decreasing the height, but you can still have the same number of units. And then you run into the same issue of massing, because you're going to have a bigger, wider building, and it's going to just be more massive, which is not something I think people like. So there's always this interplay of number of units, height, and massing. Those three things are sort of like variables where you look at the math and say, okay, squish this squishes out, push it together so it's less massive, well, then it goes up. So we come back to what is the zoning at the end of the day is the fundamental issue here. It's X number of units, it's 2 units less than the zoning. You know, it comes down to me, like, I would prefer to have a few questions answered, like things like what is the minimum code height for all for the ceilings for those units, and then what is the cumulative height of a minimum viable building? We don't know that. But I think it's also too, when you say, well, you knew the zoning from ages ago, in a normal community, in most normal local governments, you are doing updatings of heights and zonings because not every zoning perfectly encapsulates the economic reality from 30 years in the future. We can't predict that. It's not unreasonable. So to say that you should never approve any variances or rezonings, then why does councils exist? If you just have to follow the rules and there's no reason to actually adapt to modern reality, why are we even here then? Here are the rules, either comply or go away. So I just think that it's a unique approach to local government to say that everything has to fit perfectly within the box of what was written up 35 years ago. But it's not one that's standard in any community in British Columbia. It's a really unique approach to governance. It's your choice as elected official if that's the path you want to choose. But I really don't think that that's one that's actually reasonable. The reasonable thing is, what's the minimum viable project here? And until we sort of figure that out, all we're doing is creating a bunch of arbitrary rules that don't line up with the contemporary economic reality and is just patently unfair. And I have to wonder, like, is the past political contributions of the proponents influencing the decision of members of council?
Thank you. I'll leave it as a rhetorical question. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I just wanted to make the comment, I believe perhaps Councillor Harrison wasn't at the meeting where we looked at the waterfront proposal. And we did ask what the ceiling heights were in that proposal, and they're 9-foot ceiling heights. So that is within 3 stories. They're asking for a very small variance to their height, but that's within a 3-story building. So I think you would be able to build a nice building within 3 stories. In terms of, sorry, I've lost my little note. I have quite a lot of scribbling here, but I think that design is really important. I mean, I have a background in design, and design is very important, and there's different ways that you can accomplish the same thing with a better design. So I don't think that we have to say, well, it's okay for you to have a high building that's imposing on the neighbors, imposing on the entrance to town. It doesn't have to be that particular design, and that's what we're constantly working with, is that design. Well, this has changed and that has changed. Perhaps the overall design concept needs to be rethought and reworked. But I think that we can have a nice project that still provides housing for people, that can be more aesthetically pleasing and still fit within the zoning that, or the design guidelines that we have for the town and the zoning, and 3 stories.
Thank you. Mr. Seals, you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. Because it's been mentioned a few times, I do want to clarify the application that's on the agenda later, 3022 Island Highway. There's a difference in topography that's important to consider, in that on that property, as you go away from the road, it goes up steeply, right? That actually reduces the need for a height variance, because you're measuring from natural grade, which happens to be higher than the road. So in that case, the topography is actually helping to reduce the requirement for a variance. Whereas in the case of this one, where it's dropping off as you go away from Hoy Lake Road, it's having the opposite effect. So I would just caution against applying direct parallels to say, well, that property can do it with a variance of only X, whereas this one's requesting more because the topography is hurting one and helping one significantly. And I did also want to make the note that in terms of, like, OCP compliance has been mentioned a number of times by members of the public and members of council. Ultimately, it's council's discretion as to whether something complies with the official community plan. But from the perspective of the staff, this does comply with the official community plan. It complies with the use, and it complies with the density, and the height is largely compliant. The OCP does allow for taller buildings if you consider certain factors such as shading, privacy. So I just wanted to note that, in that there seems to be an assumption that there's a request to vary or somehow disregard the guidelines in the OCP, and I don't think that's the case. We completely respect council's judgment as to the variance and ultimately even OCP compliance, but interpreted according to certainly intention, this does comply with the OCP. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Just had a question about the tenure of the residential units. Are those for ownership or for rental?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Harrison. These are for sale.
And just the reason I was mentioning this is that we referred earlier to the climate emergency declaration, which is 1/3 true. Technically, it was a climate, housing, and healthcare emergency that we, Councillor Westbrook, Councillor Skipsey, and myself voted for. The two people who voted against it are no longer with us. I just want to recognize that we do have a bit of an issue with A, people having to downsize, and then B, the one thing this week I've neglected to mention it in my report is that I periodically check Craigslist for how many rentals there are. There is 1 on Craigslist. There are 0 in Kijiji for all of Qualicum Beach. So there is a need for housing writ large. This doesn't really address the rental housing issue, but there is a lack of housing that we've been building in this term. The largest project we approved was 8 units, which now the property is for sale. It's not being built. The largest thing that's actually been built, I think, is a 4-unit home. So there's some subdivisions, to be fair, which don't touch council's table. And there's a subdivision that's been developed, I believe. But we haven't really done a lot of building. So personally, I want to have one more meeting on this, is my direction, as opposed to just rejecting it out of hand to get some staff feedback. But I just want to echo to Mr. Sales when he says about the slope for comparing properties. It's also, if you're on the waterfront, it's a different economic reality than being pushed up slightly up a road. It's just waterfront properties can sell for more money, so you don't need as many units to get your money back, basically, as a proponent. So I don't know the numbers exactly because I don't do that for a living. But I just think that it's a little bit hard to say what the underlying economics are. I wish we all understood that better. But yeah, I still want to have a couple of questions for staff, get some clarity, and maybe talk about this at a future meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I agree with you entirely. There's a lot of good things about what we've been doing in this town. And as I said, Mr. Shelley, I commend you for the projects on Memorial and some of the other places I mentioned. What is that place called on the beach? Qualicum Beach? Ocean Suites. Yeah, there used to be the Captain's Inn. If anybody's familiar with the town of Qualicum Beach, that was a huge improvement. So I have these questions, and I did the same with the owners of Berwick Place, where I asked them to make these refinements that they needed to exceed some of the rules to smoothen that off. And so I agree with Councillor Harrison. There's a number of things. I don't want to reject this outright, but I'd like to ask staff to work with the developer and the architect to look at some of the areas where we have the sharpest disagreement on the height variance. And I know there's a couple of spots that I think we can work with. So I think we're on the right track. We're almost there. And I have to tell the people who live there that there will be a development there at some point, and it will be 11 meters high from Hoy Lake. So that's a given. We're just trying to make sure that that we're not making it less attractive than we could. So with that, I would ask that we, when we take the vote, that there will be questions. Councillor Harrison has questions. I have these questions, that we can work through staff with the architect, with the developers, to make this project more a success. Councillor Vander.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that if the recommendation or the motion that was made today were to pass, then the height on Hoy Lake Road would not be 11 meters. It would be less than 11 meters. So that might be something to keep in mind. That doesn't necessarily mean that that the people that live on Hoy Lake Road have to accept 11 meters, because it would be 3.78 meters lower on Hoy Lake Road than it would at the back of the building then if it was 11 across the board, or if it was 11 meters height. So.
And that is the reality. The people who live in the homes on the south side, they could go eventually, they could go to 11 meters as well. So we got to treat everybody fairly. Councillor Harrison.
The thing too is that maybe by trying to do it through this process, this specific process, it's actually making it an impossible equation for everyone. That there's too much massing, the height doesn't quite work, the density doesn't quite work, site coverage doesn't quite work, because there's no room, there's no give in the site coverage, rarely. And there might be something too where if we're going to sit down, there's going to be a rezoning process that might actually allow a variable to work now. I don't know, because again, this is not, I'm not an architect, I'm not a developer. But one thing I just think is that if we're not comfortable doing a variance permit for a building that needs a height variance that's pretty significant but otherwise complies with everything else, then maybe the rezoning would be a better tool. And I apologize to the proponent, because I know they've done a ton of work already, and then starting up a new process, the development permit fee, I think is like $4,000. But maybe there's a better option with more flexibility for all parties. And I'm just saying that as a hypothetical. I'm not saying what should or shouldn't be done. That's not really, like, I don't want to say that I have the final word on anything, but I just think that when I look at a variance process and what we're dealing with, I have a hard time seeing how things can change and really improve without basically just reducing units overall, and then maybe it doesn't make sense mathematically for the financing and everything. So maybe rezoning allows trade-offs that people would be more comfortable with. So you have slightly more density, like slightly more site coverage, but it's massed differently or something else. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to say how that would work, but just something to think about is that we still have tools in our toolbox, and maybe this isn't the right approach for to satisfy the neighbors and the proponent with a viable project. I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Mr. Sales.
Thank you. I was going to suggest that if council is going to defer it, we can defer it, and then some of these side conversations about, you know, other processes or where those trade-offs could be considered, maybe we could take it off the line with individuals that want to explore alternatives.
Okay. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I believe that it may have been, again, at the very first presentation of the proposal, where it was too high and too massive. I believe that you actually may have said if you need to increase the coverage, then that might be a possibility, and also stepping down the buildings so that each building is at a different point on the topography. So I think that would be something else to keep in mind, that we're not necessarily closed to those ideas. But again, it's been the whole height. The height thing is the sticking point, and quite honestly, I can understand that's where most of the view is going to be. So for the developer, that's the important thing. But I think for the town and for residents, there's other ways that we can look at it.
Thank you. Ms. Varela, with your planning background and the CEO, any suggestions of how we might move forward? We don't want to throw this project away, but we don't quite like the way it is. Can you see a way where we could meet in the middle somewhere?
Again, Your Worship, I wouldn't want to override the director, so I think a suggestion to take the conversation offline with the developer, again, is the only path forward. At the end of the day, it is governance. People do have a right to make an application. I know the public is sometimes confused about why applications are before council. People do have a right under the legislation to make applications, and it's council's decision on how or if those fit. So again, I'll defer to the director's comments to take this offline with the developer. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sales, if we want to have that conversation, what would you recommend we do with the motion that's on the floor?
Thank you. So this is only partially related to the motion on the floor, but I would just remind council that the development variance permit and the development permit can be considered independently. So one path forward, if council says, well, it's not the maximum height that's bothering us, it's the distribution, or maybe a portion can be that height, but we want to see it broken in some particular way. Council could actually move forward with the development variance permit, subject to potentially some changes to the development permit. So I just want to make sure council is aware that that is an option. If council wanted to advance this, the development permit would not be approved at the same time. That would have to be the subject of another discussion. So just want to make sure council's aware that even if you approve the maximum height, you would still have a chance to consider things like the massing of the building, and whether it's too big altogether. Thank you.
Okay. The motion on the floor is the one that Councillor Skipsey made, and so that's quite different than the staff recommendation. So listening to the discussion, I'm more in favor to explore what Councillor Sales just said, that we approve the variance, but that we hold off on the development permit until some of the issues that council has raised can be addressed. Councillor Skipsey.
Well, I do have concern that it's still, by approving the height, then we're approving the 14.78 meters, which is high. And I think from the pictures, I think the architect was trying to show us that it wasn't that high because it was in line with the trees, but in actual fact, to me, it looked more like a wall. So I don't think it had maybe the desired impact. I think going to 11 meters, I think, we're having that conversation about the OCP, and I think that might be more fair height to approve, but I can't approve a 14.78 meter. Almost, as was said, 97% variance on what is currently allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
I think if we start approving portions of it and not other portions, it'll create a lot of consternation, and people will be afraid, well, what are we going to approve? So I think at this point, if we're not going to approve the project writ large, then I don't see the need to partially approve the height variance until they come back with, okay, this is our new version. We need this height variance, but this is why. And there's some of that understanding of a back and forth. So I hate deferring things interminably, but I think in order to be fair to all parties, probably just deferring the whole thing would probably be the fairest path. So that way people aren't worried that if we approve the height, then they're like, well, what did we just talk about for the last age if you're not approving it?
I really appreciate your sensitivity. So your motion to defer this, to have that conversation, I'll second that.
The only question I would have to,
motion to defer supersedes any motion on the floor.
The only question I have is through the chair to staff, is there a particular meeting that would be reasonable? Are we going to defer to a definite date or just defer to a future council meeting?
I think we should put a time limit on it. Mr. Sales, what's your recommendation as far as time?
Thank you. It requires some discussion with the proponents to see whether there's some options to make adjustments. So I can't commit on their behalf, and so I think I'd rather leave it flexible. Thank you.
Okay. And each member of council separately, independently, can make you aware of what the issues that we think we can resolve. Okay. So motion to defer has been moved and seconded. Further discussion on deferment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 2 members opposed. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander opposed. Thank you. So I think we move on to the next project. Oh yeah, I think it's time for a recess. Okay, Councillor Harrison, Councillor Vander, we have a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Time limit? Councillor Vander, Councillor Skipsey, all in favor? Thank you, we've cleared that. So the next item is the development variant for Canyon Crescent Road, 796 Canyon Crescent. Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. I do have slides on this one as well. So the applicant has proposed to reduce the minimum parcel width along the front. Let me skip ahead to that. Keep going. Okay, 796 Canyon Crescent. This property is a fairly typical width, slightly larger. It's 100 feet wide. It's very large, and it's unique in that it has an undedicated road right-of-way on the backside. So technically, that's Hoy Lake Road West. We think of it as a trail. There's no intention to put a road through. So what they're proposing to do is, rather than subdivide front-back, so with some of the houses facing Hoy Lake Road and some of the houses facing Canyon Crescent, they're proposing to subdivide side to side. So this design, this was actually approved via a development permit last year. So let me, okay, I do have a quick slide showing the difference in subdivision. So if they were able to get access off Hoy Lake Road, their subdivision would look something like this. There'd be a lot in the front and a lot in the back. If they couldn't get access, then you would need an easement over that so that it would be kind of like a panhandle. The alternative, which is what they're proposing, is a side-to-side subdivision so that each of these has approximately 50 feet. House here, potential for a suite. The other advantage that they've brought to our attention is that if they constructed the 2 houses and subdivided them by way of a strata, there's some legal complications about adding additional dwelling units on the property at a later time. It's not impossible, but complicated. And so from their perspective, it's much simpler to do a side-by-side subdivision now so that in the future, any owner can add another suite without involving complicated strata amendments. So with that, the recommendation is to direct staff to issue a development variance permit for 796 Canyon Crescent Road. And I would also add that the caveat on that recommendation is that we do recommend that there be a restrictive covenant put on the property so that each of those 2 titles is not further subdivided by way of strata. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this? Yes, come on up. One at a time.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is John Larson. I live at 157 Sunningdale Road in Qualicum. I'm one of the owners of the property at 796. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of context and a little bit of clarification as it relates to our intent with the parcel. Mr. Sales has done a really nice job of sort of explaining the situation with this subdividable nature of the property. It is subdividable. It's almost 1,800 square meters. Our minimum parcel size is 700, so it's well over double the required parcel size. But we feel like a side-by-side subdivision would be more in context with the adjacent neighborhood. So we did look at that as an opportunity to deliver a type of housing that really would be unique for new housing in the area, which would allow a primary building to be constructed with the ability for a secondary detached on-grade cottage to be added in a future time. My parents are getting up in age. They're in their 70s and approaching a time where additional help and just day-to-day help is becoming necessary. I think for a lot of families in the community, that is something that is prevalent. So the opportunity to share resources, move on to a single site that would allow future long-term ability for an on-grade cottage to be developed is something we think is really an important land use for our town. So the idea of multiple dwellings on the parcel, I think there was some confusion that our intent might be to create separate strata titles and to sell them. That has never been our intent. We have made that clear to both council and to staff through letters. We've said to staff as well that we are committed to building exactly what we proposed and was approved in the development permit, and we would register any covenants required to ensure that. So it will be 2 lots with 1 title per lot. There is no intent to create 4 titles so that they could be individually sold. As part of our application process, we did meet with our adjacent neighbors. You know, we've always believed that consultation with the neighborhood is an important aspect of development. It is a change for the neighborhood for sure, and you want to make sure that they understand that change primarily, and then in some cases they appreciate what you're hoping to do. So both adjacent neighbors have provided letters of support for the development, which I think is a positive. You know, they understand what the intent is. They appreciate the effort that's being made. So we have provided those letters of support to staff, and I believe they were put into the correspondence log. So we think it's a great opportunity for us to continue to strengthen the housing choice within the community, do it in a way that's compatible, low impact for the neighborhood. So that's all I had to say, but I would be happy to answer any questions if there was any.
Thank you. You said that your intent is to have 4 or 2 units with 2 separate units as well. Intent is good, and you do build what you say you're going to build. I commend you for that as well. But can that be confirmed by some legal documents, Mr. Sales?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So if the intention is to require 2 units, then that could be discussed with the applicant. It hasn't been to this date.
I heard there was a letter saying that's what we will do. So will you sign off a covenant that says that, so we have future records that that's what was intended and only and confirmed?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, to just make sure the details of what we're talking about are correct. So our goal is to construct a primary building, a detached garage with a suite-ready component. So that will allows a family to purchase it. Maybe they're not ready for their parents to move in. At the time that they want their parents to move in, it's ready. It's literally plug and play to convert to a suite. So we are absolutely committed to registering a covenant that says we are only permitted to have 1 title, 1 primary dwelling, and 1 cottage.
Great, that's very clear. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I'm just not clear. On page 383 on the bottom, and then continuing on to 384. Okay, the applicant has committed to registering a covenant on both parcels that would ensure a maximum of 2 dwelling units per parcel as per staff recommendation. In addition, both dwelling units on each parcel could be strata titled. So can you clarify that for me? I think I asked this question before, but I still don't get it. So
No problem. And I will be as crystal clear as I possibly can. So letter was sent to council, all members of council. In writing, we clarified that we would be asking for 1 title per property, maximum. And so we are more than happy to enter into that covenant. We think that is we kind of reverse engineer the product. We know who the end user would be. We think it's going to be someone who's a 50-something or maybe a 40-something whose parents, we want to join resources and move on to that property. But the problem is we may not want to do it right now. We may have a 5-year plan for something like that, but it allows us to facilitate that. So two individual properties, when the subdivision is completed, 2 titles, but there would be a primary building as well as the ability to build a cottage on the property.
Thank you. Mr. Sales.
Thank you. I'm just looking at that specific wording, and I think it wasn't worded correctly. It should say that in the absence of a covenant, two strata titles per lot would be permitted. So that's an error in the staff report. I think it contradicts some of the other language later on. Thank you for catching that.
Yeah, good catch, Councillor Vander. Anything else?
My I actually have quite a loud voice, but in terms of the cottages, so they will be finished, like roughed in, everything will be roughed in, so the garage space will be specific to the garage space, and the other space will be move-in ready, I think you call it, or roughed in, as I call it. Is that correct? And do you think the likelihood is that people would, in fact, build a suite and rent it out?
So 2 questions there. So if you do refer to the drawings that were submitted, the garage is separate from the primary building, and it does have a dedicated area for the cottage to be placed within. So there's a schematic showing how it would lay out and how it would be arranged in that space. So yes, it is all going to be roughed in. It is ready for it to be basically the kitchen cabinets put in is sort of the addition that's required. As it relates to whether people will do it or not, I think, we've been a part of a lot of development in the community that looks forward to additional density. We've talked about the Memorial Avenue corridor coming into town. That was a project that we participated in. The suites were over the garage, and when we started them, there really wasn't a lot of interest. I think as we had evolved, there became some significant interest in placing rental suites over those garages. So I think our community's at a place now where rental suites, where revenue helpers, where multi-generational living is something that's becoming a viable solution for families to be able to invest in real estate. So I believe that they will, and I don't know that they do it day one, but I know long term it absolutely, when it's ready, when it's roughed in, the prohibitive costs that are associated typically with doing it are eliminated, so it makes it extremely more viable.
Any other questions, comments? Ready to make a motion? Oh, sorry. Come on up.
Okay, I live on Canyon Crescent, 799, and I was not consulted, and my neighbor was not either. I did speak to her, maybe either side, one, but I used to own the duplex that's next door to this property, and that property, that development didn't really fit into the neighborhood. I owned it. I had rentals in there. It's a different dynamic than the rest of the neighborhood. They're all retired, settled down families, large properties. People take care of their land and their property. It's a very nice neighborhood. I think this development doesn't fit for 2 reasons. The lot's 50 feet. It's not 50 feet. I think it's less than that. It's 90 feet wide or 95. Half of that makes a very narrow lot. It's going to be a skinny little house, skinny little property. Maybe developing it the other way would make more sense. And I think opening it up to having it go from a single family to a development where you're going to have 2 and 2 or more is putting 4 families on a property that's designed for 1. And so, therefore, I think splitting it that way, making it too small as opposed to back and front. I know Hoy Lake isn't a road yet, and that's not up to me. It's council's decision on that, whether they're going to allow him to go down there. But my objection is that neighborhood hasn't been consulted. I haven't, and it doesn't fit with the area at all. And you're opening it up to all of those lots, cutting them in half if you do this one. So, anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the gallery? All right. So you mentioned earlier that we already had approved a portion of this kind of development. Can you refresh our memory what we already have approved for this?
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of what's actually being constructed, you're looking at a primary dwelling, 2 primary dwellings, and 2 suites. That's what council approved. So a total of 4 dwelling units on the parcel. Now, at that time, when council considered it, the thought was that they would be divided by way of a strata title. So that is still a viable option. So essentially, it would look the same, it would feel exactly the same. The issue is the ability to add the suites later on. So that's one thing. The other thing that is important to note is that the property permits 4 dwelling units. So certainly the history of the neighborhood is that there's been 1 detached unit on each parcel, but with the changes that the province made a few years ago, that's no longer the case, and they all permit 4 dwelling units. If this development doesn't move forward, this owner or a future owner could certainly move forward with some sort of a front-back subdivision like this. We do have those in a few other areas of town, and from a planning and neighborhood continuity perspective, they're actually a bit awkward because they don't have direct access to the roadway. It requires passing over your neighbor's property. Sometimes there's things in the way from the perspective of fire safety, not always ideal. And the form and character is also different because you end up having houses in the back adjacent to the neighbor's backyard, right? So in terms of neighborhood continuity, I couldn't definitively say that this is a better option. I think it's actually a worse option. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the gallery? Councillor Vander, go ahead.
Thank you. We do have on page 399 the area that notification letters were given to or sent to. And I'm just wondering why the speaker from the neighborhood didn't get one, or it looks like she should have.
Thank you. So it was delivered, would have been mailed to that address. It would have to be clarified whether they were referring to consultation directly with the developer or simply notification of this meeting.
Okay. And also, when a letter is sent out of notification, does it have the explanation of what the current zoning allows? Because I think that the resident who spoke perhaps wasn't aware that 4 separate units are allowed under the Bill 44. So does the letter explain that?
Thank you. So the letters typically explain what the variance is that's being requested. So in this case, the variance wasn't to allow more units on the parcel. It was to minimize or to vary the frontage requirements. And then there's also a reference in any notice that there's further information available at the town hall. So we try to be specific in providing enough information while telling them where they can find more.
Just to follow up on that, if the proposal was for a 4-plex and it met every other part of the restrictions, then we wouldn't even have a public hearing about that. Is that correct?
That is correct. If it was a 4-plex on the property, it would require a development permit. So that development permit would go to council, but there would be no public input.
Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Okay, so I had a question more about, well, it's kind of related, the undedicated road right-of-way at the back. And if we don't envision that ever being a roadway, what would be the process to change it into what it is, which is an active transportation route?
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Skipsey. I'd have to look into that as an option. It's already in the official community plan. It's not identified as a future roadway, but it is dedicated road right-of-way. So I'd have to talk with the town's lawyer about that. I'm not sure what the process would be, whether it would mean actually closing the right-of-way. I'd have to look into some options if that's a priority. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, it is for me in a way because it does change how things are allowed to be subdivided, I guess. So I would like to pursue that if there's time at some point. But I'm also not sure that this is like my vision of what I thought Bill 44 was trying to accomplish in the more diversity of housing. And I know that the speaker said that the duplex kind of didn't fit in, but I actually think adding to the diversity of the housing mix, whether it be a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex or whatever, provides a different housing, maybe at a different affordability or options and whatnot. So I am concerned that the variance is 8.5 meters, which is significant, and what that does to the character of neighborhoods. And if we're doing this in this neighborhood, then we would probably be doing it all over the town. And so, yeah, I'm just not sure if this is setting a precedent that takes us down a route that we want to go, or whether really we need to put more thought into what Bill 44 is what we hope Bill 44 accomplishes for our community. Because I think this is providing two basically single-family expensive homes, which is what we have pretty much everywhere in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Just to echo Councillor Skipsey's point, I believe in the census is 3,500 households live in single-family homes in the last census, and there are 55 duplexes in our whole town. To some extent, the fact that duplex doesn't quite fit in is kind of natural. It's not many of them. But I do also recall, too, that I don't know if this was included. It's been 2 years since I saw the zoning map, but there was a 1957 zoning map when the town incorporated a lot of the wood streets into the town. And we had two residential zoning types back then. One was single family and one was duplex. Now, we didn't build out duplexes in the duplex area because single-family homes sold better and it was less of a headache, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But anyways, I just think it might be interesting. It might have originally been zoned duplex, potentially in that location. I don't know. But I do think this idea of a rental suite adjacent where family can live in is something we need a lot of. As you can sell by the number of speakers, it's far less contentious than a multifamily building in a prominent location. So I do think this is something we would like to see more of. And to Councillor Skipsey's point too about the active transportation network being somewhat more protected, I think that's actually a really great idea. For an older population, you want to have a lot of active transportation with clear corridors that are designated for that. We're not a big city, but there are some data from big cities about, for example, how busy 2nd Avenue is when it's closed off for some of the markets once in a while. You get a lot of people. So that sort of thing, I think long-term is good planning, but it's a bit of a detour from today's decision, but it's a good conversation to bear in mind moving forward.
Thank you. Councillor Vander.
Thank you. I also did have a question for Mr. Sales. Do you think in terms of the design guidelines that I know the proponent helped work on for the bill, I always say Bill 44, but it's SHMU or however you want to say it. Do you think that this follows the design guidelines, particularly in terms of the access and the garage? Because the parking, I think, was an important point of that design discussion.
Thank you. And last year, when council considered the development permit for this, that was a point of discussion as to whether or not having the garages in the front complied with the development permit guidelines. But council has already decided that this does meet those development permit guidelines. So that's not something that needs to be reconsidered today. They do have a valid development permit that shows that approval is already in place. Thank you.
Any further discussion? We need a motion to proceed with the staff recommendation. Councillor Harrison, Councillor Young, seconding. Further discussion? Councillor Skipsey.
Yeah, so it's about issuing the development variance permit, not just accepting it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I support this. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Was there someone opposed? I don't see it. Okay, thank you. Mr. Sales, please continue.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. The next development variance permit application is a property at 846 Woodside Crescent. This is a property that had a fire and has since been largely reconstructed. However, when they applied for a new building permit, they realized that there had been a minor addition to the rear of the property that doesn't comply to the current zoning regulations, and so they've requested a development variance permit so that they can rebuild this rear covered porch on the back of their house. This is just showing the markup from the building inspector when they applied for it. You know, a DVP is required to build this extension that's on the rear of the property, and this is in your package. It's hard to see on the screen. And the recommendation is to issue the development variance permit. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Skipsey, second by Councillor Vander. Discussion? Oh. Sir, come on up. Yeah.
I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I do have some pictures of the property in question. And I think it's very, very important to recognize what's happening here. I don't have a complete package for every number of councillors, but perhaps...
Sir, you need to speak when you get to the microphone because we can't... Excuse me, you need to speak at the microphone because we can't hear you when you talk walking away.
Sorry. I don't have pictures for each member, but they perhaps can share some. It's very germane that, that we see exactly what's happening here. So there's a package.
Yeah, but they're just going to have to quickly look at a few pictures.
Oh, okay, that's enough.
Okay, my name is Vern Weddle, and I live at 853 Woodcrest Place. And the property in question here is directly behind my property. I moved into my home and built it in 1996. So I'm very, very familiar with the property immediately behind me. It was built, I believe, 2 years after I moved in. Sorry, I'm dry. The application says that the applicant wanted to rebuild the house in the same footprint as the original house. That's not the case. This is not the same footprint. There was no covered deck on the original property. Like no covered deck at all. Sorry. The other thing as well is this is an application for a variance to build this covered deck. They've already built it. So was this a case of let's build it anyway without permission and ask for forgiveness later? I'm quite frankly offended that would happen. If you take a look at the pictures, that is a massive structure that they've built onto this house. As I said before, that was not in the original house. There was no covered patio on that property behind me. They're asking for a variance of 2 meters in a backyard. The backyards on those lots behind me are very, very shallow as it is, very shallow. Apparently there was a setback with 6 meters, and they're now asking for 4. That's 2 meters. This is not 4 or 5 inch error on measuring tape. This is huge. 2 meters out of 6 is a big, big number. It imposes a massive structure on my property. I believe that it impacts on my property value, and for sure, when I go to sell this down the road, it's going to affect on the saleability of my property. And I'm saying that this structure should be taken down because it was built when it shouldn't have been. And a variance of 2 meters is more than unreasonable. Did you take a look at the pictures and see how massive that structure is? It is huge.
Yeah, we got the pictures, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Svensson, did you get the name of the presentation?
Pardon me?
Just your name.
Oh.
No, your name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Vern Whittle, W-H-I-T-T-L-E.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. I'd like to look at the photos and talk to the building inspector because my understanding of the history was different, and maybe my understanding based on the application was incorrect, and so I feel a little bit unprepared to respond to the speaker's comments. So if council is willing to defer this to the next meeting, I'd like to prepare more information. Thank you.
That seems very reasonable. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Vander move to refer this to the next council meeting. Thank you for your delivering the pictures. So all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
Excuse me, will I get notice then if you're going to revise this or something?
Yes, it's coming back to a future council meeting, and you will be. You'll be getting. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you would get notification.
Thank you. When council defers the decision, notice isn't given the second time. Today was the public input.
Okay. So we got your input, but we're not making the decision today. Councillor Harrison.
However, the agendas are published prior to the meeting. So just if you look at our council calendar where there's regular meetings, because it would be a regular meeting unless I'm incorrect, and then just usually something like the Thursday or Friday before the Wednesday regular meeting, just check the agenda to see if the property is on the list, and it'll be there. And also, too, you'll have the staff report that'll you'll probably want to read.
And I'll get a copy of the staff report?
No, sorry, we shouldn't be having this kind of a meeting.
Yeah.
It'll be a staff report on the agenda. Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Farrell?
Thank you, Your Worship. So if the speaker could keep an eye on the April 22nd agenda, and again, if they need assistance, they can just call Town Hall, and we're willing to support it. It is operational. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for coming by. So that's been the motion that carried. The next one is the development variance permit 3022 Island Highway West. Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. I do have some slides on this one. This is a development variance permit for a property that council has seen several times in the past. At 3022 Island Highway West, it's a large property that is zoned for commercial and residential. It backs onto a steep slope, so hard to see on the screen up here, but it is in your package. The height of the building is actually quite small relative to the bluff behind it. The requested variance is a height variance. A previous version of this application actually had a requested variance to the front yard setback as well, so that has been changed. Since the last time council saw this, the maximum height has actually reduced significantly as well. So there are some perspective renderings in your package. Those are provided just for context. Council's not making a decision about the development permit today, only about whether or not to issue notification to the surrounding property owners within 100 meters that this is going to be considered at a future meeting. So specifically, the requested variance is going from 7.5 to 11.44 meters. And the structure, underground parking on the first level, and then there's 3 above that. Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. If I could answer any questions, I'd be pleased to. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Councillor Harrison.
I have a lot of questions, but I think it'd be for the building permit stage, not for this stage.
Okay.
So this is just strictly height, so I don't really have too many questions about the height.
So you move the staff recommendation? Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Young. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. I think that's it for the open session. A motion to go in camera would be appropriate. Councillor Skipsey, Councillor Young, all in favor? We are in camera. So we'll take a few minutes break and we'll move to the committee room. Councillor, Ms. Varela.